Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boss Rush pre-show. I am your host, Corey Deering, and alongside me, as always, is the PC muscle race himself, LeRon Dawkins.
Hey, what's poppin'?
Hey, LeRon.
Hey, Corey.
How's it going?
Something about your vibe seems different.
I'm feeling great right now. I'm feeling great. It's not because of our guests. It's not because of all the cool things happening right now. But I'm feeling good today. You know, sometimes you have those days where you just feel good, LeRon.
Is your great feeling chemically induced?
Don't worry about it. Speaking of chemically induced, also here is my co-host for Tower Casuals, the mayor of the Deepstone Crypt, as we like to say, the God Slayer and the Witness Vanquisher, Josh Finney.
It's been a while. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, Josh. You know you're welcome here. How are you, Josh? I feel like it's been like 3 days since we talked last.
I'm good. It was a busy weekend, but it was a good one. It was a productive one.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Productive. My weekend was not so productive, but sometimes that's okay.
Hey, you need that.
Yeah. Played a lot of weird games with my children, but we'll get into that on the main show. We have a special guest, and Josh, this is partially why you're here. It's because the last time he was here, you were not. But I know you're a big fan of this man's games, just like we all are. The CEO of Something Wicked Games, former producer over at Bethesda, Jeff Gardiner, is back on the show. Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me back on again. I've been making games for a really long time. I love talking about games. I pretty much eat, sleep, and live games. In the pitch deck that I got, where I got the funding for my new studio, I have a picture of myself with an Atari 2600, which dates the shit out of me, but it's all true. There you go. I'll share it with you later. You can use that picture of me in the show. There you go.
I also had Atari 2600 at a certain point in my youth.
I too did. My dad brought one home, and we played Kaboom and Combat, and apparently
Combat was the greatest, especially like the freaking the helicopter scenario. Oh my god.
Yeah, and apparently the bad version of Pac-Man, and
oh yeah.
The only good thing about Pac-Man or about that Pac-Man was the sound effects. That's the only good thing about that game.
You know, LeRon, I'll let you think that.
I had a Nintendo 64, so
hey,
look at this youngin'.
That's right. I'm the youngin' here tonight.
No,
I had a black and white Game Boy. I am that old. I am old enough to have experienced the black and white Game Boy before Game Boy Color was a thing.
This guy, first system's a freaking Nintendo 64. Ain't that cute?
Speaking of black and white Game Boy, I have mine finally complete in box back there. Jeez. Very, very excited.
You're not gonna deconstruct it and mount it on your wall?
No. I'll buy some.
I thought that was the thing. I thought that was the thing we do.
You know what? Sure. I'm not going to deconstruct mine. I'm going to probably buy a broken one off of eBay and figure that out. But
it's already off the rails.
I know. Sorry, Jeff. This is how it goes.
I
Jeff,
started it. That's fine.
For people who may not know who you are, who are you? Why are you important?
Oh, sure. I had the honor of working at Bethesda Game Studios for 16 years. I started I worked in the basement with about 40, maybe 50 folks, and finished up Oblivion. And then worked as the producer in charge of design through Fallout 3 and Skyrim, then the lead producer of Fallout 4, and then project lead of Fallout 76. I used to have to duck when I said that, but these days that game is doing really well, and I'm really proud of it and all the work that's been done since I've left. So that's what I did for a number of years. And then the last 2.5 years I've been at Something Wicked Games.
Awesome. Working on Wyrdsong.
Wyrdsong, yes. Working on another RPG we titled Wyrdsong, which we teased probably way too early, but way back in 2022 at Opening Night Live, the big Opening Night Live post, the first one post-COVID. So there, you can check out the trailer online.
I mean, you gotta put yourself out there. You gotta get that out there, and you just put new images out on social media also.
Yeah, we leak some I leak screenshots concept art every once in a while. We're going to make a big announcement in the next couple of months. We have some screenshots and other things we're going to release. So there'll be more on that to come very, very soon.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. This is a real pleasure.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun.
We are. Speaking of fun, we're going to talk about our games of the year so far, or maybe lack thereof, because as we were talking before we started recording the pre-show, we've all been playing a lot of older games, but we've played a few this year. Jeff, you are our esteemed guest. You mentioned a game that came out this year.
Did I? Yeah. I think it's funny because one of the things we talked about prior to this was how most of my playtime has been trying to finish up the massive backlog of crazy great games that came out last year. So the start of my year, I did a second run of Baldur's Gate 3, which pretty much wrecked me. I put about probably 250 hours in that game total, I think, over the course of just a few months. And then after that, I was like, it's one of those. I don't know if you guys have that sensation where you just try a ton of games and nothing sticks. It's been months of that, but I did. Manor Lords is probably the game that came out this year I've liked the most. I don't know if I would ready to give that game of the year since it's still in early access. The other one I'm playing a lot is Total War Warhammer 3. I'm a big Warhammer nerd. There's a Warhammer shelf here behind me that I literally realized before the podcast is collapsed, and the picture frame below it is holding it up. So it might collapse during the show from those ancient Warhammer books I've got. Anyway, they put out some very good DLC this year after a bunch of controversy towards the end of last year. Michaela's son is one of them. It's a dwarven faction that they put out, and I played a whole long campaign of that. So if I had to pick a DLC of the year, it would be the Total War Warhammer 3 DLC.
Nice. Are you no, I don't know how you say this because I'm not a Warhammer person, but are you like a normal Warhammer person, or are you a 40K person?
Both, but probably more the fan. I grew up on Fantasy Battle. That's mostly what you see up there. So I do Age of Sigmar now because they killed the old world in a fit of madness about 5 or 6 years, 8 years ago. I don't even know. But I do both. So I have Necrons and Thousand Suns for 40K and too many Age of Sigmar. I'm working on Skaven now for Age of Sigmar. So there you go.
I'm looking forward to Space Marine 2, the video game that's coming out soon.
Very looking forward to that.
Josh, you're not normally here, and you play a lot of games. You probably have more to talk about than me and LeRon combined, because we stick to old stuff.
Man, I don't know about that. A lot of my time this year has been spent in RPGs. Big surprise, shooters and RPGs is where I spend a lot of my time. But this year, probably the two that I've spent the most time in are different takes on beloved games. Of course, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Persona 3 Reload have been the two that I've probably pumped close to 100 hours into both of those games each. My first real run, I don't remember a whole lot of Final Fantasy VII from when I played as a kid, so it's been great getting to go back and play this and not be 7 or 8 years old and get frustrated with turn-based combat. I really, really like the open world nature of the game. I like the twists that both Remake and Rebirth have put onto a timeless story. There's a reason why it's one of the most beloved JRPGs of all time. It's an endearing story. It's an endearing cast. And kind of the reshuffling of things to make the story flow better are these opportunities you get when you go back to a story nearly 30 years later. I can't wait for part 3. Rebirth is definitely in the driver's seat for my game of the year right now. Crossing my fingers that I get a little mini DLC, kind of like we got with Intergrade for Remake. And hoping for that Dirge of Cerberus remake. It's the last Final Fantasy VII game we haven't seen. And then Persona 3 Reload. If you've heard me on any podcast for the last couple of years, I fell down the Persona rabbit hole in late 2022, and I've played them in reverse order now. I went from 5 to 4 to 3. Gearing up for that Persona 3 DLC next month. It's definitely the oldest one. You can see that it is the foundation of 4 and 5, which I regard as two of the greatest games ever made. But 3 definitely, I mean, it's got an incredible cast of characters. And I think if you're going to spend 80 to 100 hours in an RPG, it has to have a lovable main cast, especially when it's not big, sprawling, open world with lots of quests, like kind of like The Witcher 3 or, you know, like a Bethesda title or even Baldur's Gate, like it's when it's more narrow and focused, like those core 8 characters really have to be special. And that's something I've enjoyed. So as I've gotten more into reading a lot of manga and watching a lot of anime that I started during COVID, I think these games have kind of endeared themselves a little bit more to me. And I think, again, it's a beautiful way to update a game that I think was a little frustrating for some folks, especially for me. I tried playing the PSP version a couple of years back when it came to consoles, and it was just really, really hard for me to get into. It's very visual novel heavy. They started to make the transition after 3, and to have it play more in the style of Persona 5 Royale was really, really nice to see. It shows that you can have 2 different versions of a beloved game, and they still are both totally valid.
Yeah, Persona's it's one of those series.
It's a time commitment.
Yeah, that's.
I laugh whenever my best friend did a lot of hours of Baldur's Gate last year and this year. That's still his most played game this year. I think probably 400 hours across the whole year, and we both laughed because he was like, "Oh, you know, you're never going to get into Persona," and I'm like, "Oh, you're not going to get into Baldur's Gate that much," and now we're both laughing at each other. So
Mhm.
we swapped places. You know, instead of me playing Baldur's Gate, I play, you know, D&D with my friends once a month. So it all kind of equals out.
You gonna do that Baldur's Gate thing soon, Josh?
I need to. I'm currently in the middle of deciding if I'm going to go with full on building a PC or if I'm going to go with a Steam Deck instead. But I've decided that's the only way I'm playing Baldur's Gate is if I get on Steam. I don't want to play it through console. I want to be able to play with my friends who already have, you know, characters, or who can just dip in and out without them having to buy the game another time. So
should get it on Xbox Series S. I hear couch co-op's great on that.
No, not if my life depended on it.
Oh,
I respect Josh's decision.
Yeah,
I love couch co-op. I don't want something that very clearly is struggling to run on even higher end versions of these consoles on couch co-op. It's a very unique game that I want to be able to experience the way it's meant to be played.
Yeah, I saw that article pop up again, the Baldur's Gate on Series S thing pop up earlier when I was creating a doc for another show, and I was like, oh man, rip.
Here we go again.
Yep, here we go again. Speaking of PC gamer, LeRon.
I feel like the only thing I'm playing on I feel like the only PC games I'm playing that are actually like supposedly new is Tekken 8. And if we want to count Ghost of Tsushima, you know, I'd say that. I feel like it's just August 13th. I feel like it's too early to call a game of the year just yet because this is going to be this month in September a hell month for releases. Tekken 8 best fighting game so far, game of the year, fighting game of the year so far. That because even with Grand Blue Relink and all that stuff, like good fun, but I don't know, like Tekken's got my attention. I was also looking at like the 2024 releases that have a 90 out of a 90 and higher Metacritic score. And I mean, Shadow of the Erdtree is just kicking everybody's ass with a 95. Final Fantasy Rebirth's in 7th place with 92. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and The Final Shape for Destiny 2 are all tied at 92. Lorelei and the Laser
wild to me.
I know.
Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a 91. Animal Well, Balatro, and The Last of Us Remastered and Tekken 8 are 90. Are tied for 90. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. So at least I'm playing one highly acclaimed game in this list.
It's fair. I mean, to be fair, you're playing Ghost of Tsushima 2, which came out on PC this year.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, so it is a 2024 release. I can't seem to find where it's rated at in Metacritic right now.
My 2020 game of the year, for the record.
I think it's an at 89. I think.
Loved it.
It's the best Assassin's Creed game ever released.
That is true. That is true. I love this. I love the storytelling and the flow of Ghost of Tsushima. It is a phenomenal game.
It is a love letter to the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an example. I use it as an example of you can tell when a game is great, and generally it means that developers loved it, right? And by this I mean you see this in games and the little details that could easily not be in the game that are there. And the example in Ghost of Tsushima is when you are on the horse and you're going through those tall grasses, and you just randomly lean over and run your fingers through them as you're going. Like somebody that was not on a spreadsheet, that was not somebody didn't sit in a meeting and go, you know what we should do? We should spend all this time when because that is programming and animations and there's all sorts of things that have to go into that, right? And somebody just goes, I'm going to do this because it's. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes, okay. I'm just making sure.
Oh yeah,
Because
you're welcome. You're welcome to it.
Okay, because it's fucking cool, right?
Mhm.
And they did it because it's fucking cool. And you see this in games that are the real great games. You know, not just highly Metacritic rated games, but you see it. And somebody loved that game, and they just the developers loved it. You can tell, and it's a love letter to gaming.
Mhm.
A lot
Anyways, that's my spiel on that.
It's funny. I love the LeRon brought up Ghost of Tsushima because my partner and I just finished watching Shogun.
Okay.
And it's so clear. Like I've been going through and reading the book it's based off of now.
The book is very good. Yeah.
That is massive. I thought the Song of Ice and Fire novels were huge. This is bigger than that by like 300 pages.
Oh man.
I could hurt somebody with the paperback version of this. It's in 2 volumes because it's so big in paperback. But reading that was clearly an even though that takes place like 500 years later, you can see like many of the themes from that novel are present in Ghost of Tsushima's story. Because I think it's this amazing story of, it's about a samurai's honor and about the honor of, feudal Japan. And I think to see that play out in a video game is something that like clearly it was a love of the culture. And that it wasn't just, oh, we're going to make a game set in Japan and it's going to be action adventure and this and that. It's no, we're going to study the culture. We're going to study this specific province and we're going to base it on this island and we're going to recreate it to the best of our ability.
And
Jeff
it was fun as hell. And it was fun as hell.
It's fun as hell. Like it's one of the only games I've ever wanted to 100% the open world. Like Jeff mentioned the detail of running your hands through the grass. The title pop in that game is one of the most memorable ever for me because you're galloping through the grass.
Yeah.
After the prologue, and it's just like the music hits you, and oh my god, it's incredible.
Samurai sword flick with a thumb, like there's just so many little, and you see that, and you're like, oh, I'm ready. Here we go.
This guy's like you can turn on Kurosawa mode too. Like it really is like the 7 Samurai video game.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's so fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, my boyfriend and I were also watching Shogun. We're on episode 5 now, and this show is blowing me away. I'm pissed that I wasn't watching it. I'm pissed that I wasn't watching it when it was a live television event, but I'm watching it now. So yeah, and Ghost of Tsushima is a pretty game. It's probably gonna be a top 10 of like best games I have ever played in my life at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I got to get on the PlayStation app and download it to my PlayStation right now because that is really one of those. LeRon and I have had this discussion. I don't like the DualSense controller, so I try to avoid it when possible. But this is one of those games that I probably can't do that. Huh?
You need to use your DualSense controller for this. Like
I'm using the few games that I argue for it.
I'm using my DualSense controller to play it on the PC, and yeah, it's fucking great.
Nice.
This and Spider-Man are like the 2 that I really love because the haptics, like I feel like we're going to keep coming back to this theme tonight of like really loving your craft and to see how those are programmed, like the light trigger pulls or the harder trigger pulls do different things or, affects how quickly you do a motion and this and that. Like you actually feel the strain on the controller. I think that's a really cool feature. It irritated me at first. And I think if it was in every game, it probably would. But for those experiences that are already good, it takes an already great experience and just elevates it a little bit more.
Yeah.
When it's implemented properly, when it's gimmicky, it is always bad. Yeah.
So I always laugh when things like that are put in. It's just like, it's kind of reminds me of the Wii. Like the only like really great usage of things like that were the first party teams. And so I always love seeing things like that, but I always wonder like how widespread is this going to get used? Because you have to think about, well, I'm programming it specially for this specific platform. What about if I'm porting it to PC, if I'm porting it to Xbox or the Switch or whatever? Like they don't have those same features.
Yeah, I feel like if the Xbox had controller like those types of controllers, they would probably be used a little bit more than they are now.
Corey, what have you been enjoying? You've
Oh
asked
boy,
all of us.
I know. So I've been enjoying a lot of. I've actually shocked at how great the final shape was for Destiny. I know it's kind of a cop out because it's an expansion, but I'm using it. Josh, you and I do a podcast, a Destiny podcast, and this was probably the most positive we've been on the game since. Well, I guess it started with Into the Light, right? But like, it's probably the most positive we've been in a while.
Yeah, I think it's really hard, I think, because no game has ever really tried to wrap up after 10 years. Like, how do you wrap up 10 years of storytelling? I think, like, World of Warcraft might be the closest, but I mean, that's still ongoing. It just started or is about to start a brand new saga. When I look at we were talking about live service games before we got the camera rolling, and I think, we see so many of them peter out after the initial release, or maybe they get a DLC or two in. Destiny 2, like, not even like the whole Destiny franchise, but like Destiny 2 telling this story since 2017 has just been something really weird to witness. It's been this roller coaster of emotions. Like, oh my god, like we're in a crater. It's like that things are dire. Like even the game direct, Luke Smith came out and talked about it and was like that was a really bleak time for us. We didn't know if our funding was going to get pulled, etc. And then they come back with Forsaken 7 months later, and it's this incredible high, and then you get another valley, and then you get these sustained highs. And I think when you have those, yeah, you get those sustained highs, and it makes when it dips even a little bit, it makes it harder to swallow, I think, the longer you've been playing. But to stick an impossible landing as best as you could after they had those horrible layoffs last fall, 100 people lost their jobs last fall, and then the delay happens, and then they deliver just this incredible batch of content between Into the Light and the final shape. They wrap up all these story threads, they give a fitting send off to several beloved characters, and even found an appropriate way to bring back Nathan Fillion's Cade 6. And it all works. It all makes sense. Like that was the thing I was saying during the raid race, watching it with some of our mutual friends. It's like it just works. And this should not work. There are things happening in a first person shooter that I would never dream of putting in. Making shapes by interacting with statues to like in a non-combat encounter. Like there is combat, but that's not the focus. Like your character canonically dying during it, like that is, I would never dream of something like that in a storyline. And here they are, and they're like, oh yeah, without that delay, that doesn't happen.
Right.
The best encounter they've ever done doesn't happen without a delay.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean, that whole half that story doesn't happen without the delay either.
A 12-man activity that flawlessly worked the minute it was launched at like 7 a.m. Central Time. Yeah, it was great. It was great to witness in real time. I just, again, these things, and like that was born out of a glitch in the game where we were running 12-man raids because we could all join each other.
Right.
And
what a weird time.
I love when I see things like that become part of like, oh, it was like a you had to be there moment, but we're going to make this a moment for everyone eventually.
Right. Yeah. And then, just kind of wrapping everything up with that final cutscene, right? Like you said, saying goodbye to, beloved characters and kind of introducing new ones to the game. I mean, we've been talking about them in the lore for a while, but like Micah 10 and some of these other characters that have been introduced. It's just
quite literally like the universe is a blank slate now. So
yeah,
go crazy.
Putting aside what's going on there right now, like they could literally go anywhere at this point. So,
right.
But also I want to shout out Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. It was really good, really really good. Even on Switch, it was really good. Yeah, even on Switch, it was really good. And then I know I'm in the minority here, but I really loved Hellblade 2.
How are you in the minority? I thought everybody that played Hellblade 2 loved it.
I feel no, not everybody.
I mean, folks. There was a lot of folks that like kind of like said it was like felt like a walking sim, but for the most
I
part,
mean,
like
it is with puzzles and light combat, right? I mean, that's kind of
That's what those games are, though. Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah. Anybody
the first one was. Yeah,
anybody expecting anything more than a prettier version of the first one was like kind of kidding yourself at this point. At this point, although
I think the issue to me personally, I think the issue was the length. It felt like I think it probably would have been received a little bit better, like lengthwise, and like, oh, there's just like minimal combat, and obviously a lot of the people I think critiquing that didn't play the first one, like Corey and Jeff said, like what you're getting into if you play this.
Yeah,
it's kind of an Order 1886 situation for me. Like if you get that out
studio
in the
just
generation. Like maybe that's received a little bit better. Like we're more accepting of, oh, you're trying something new. This is a demo to show the tech and the sound design that you have, because it's impeccable in those regards.
Yeah, and I think this would have been received better if it came out at launch also, or like in that launch window, and not
but
3 years later.
3.5 years and a global pandemic later, here we are.
Yeah, but I really love that game. I played through it twice. I got all the rare 1K for me achievements, although it was not very hard. You just had to find everything.
I think it's the perfect Game Pass game, honestly.
Yeah.
It's short. Then you're not as upset about the length of it when it's just something you get part of the subscription. You know what I'm saying? Like that's to me is like that I think Xbox should be doing more of those.
That's my take too. I like that. That's one of the things like I advocate for when we talk about Game Pass is I think from a first party perspective, it allows you to take more risks. Without Game Pass, I think Josh Sawyer talked about this when Pentiment came out. Without Game Pass, you don't get Pentiment. You don't get things like Grounded.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You don't get that, and on Steam, it depends. Like, there's a lot of indie games on Steam that have reasonable budgets, that set reasonable expectations for sales, right, and are successful with much lower sales because they didn't cost as much, right. The thing is that I guarantee I'd probably get in trouble for saying that somebody at Xbox will probably look at that, go, that game costs how much money, and you know what I'm saying, like, and that's the problem is they need to find a way to. Like back in the day when I started making games, the online stuff was still sort of nascent, right? It was very new. And a lot of games are 7, 8, 10 hours, 12, 15 hours long. I worked on a couple of them, right? And they did very well. But now that there's all this competition for not only dollars, but time, those smaller games can get crushed, especially when they cost a lot of money to make.
The numbers game like really seems to be skewing I would say the public gamer's perception of what the value of a game should be.
I agree. Like we talked about that earlier. Like I can't tell you how many games on Steam I see people go, I played this game 80 hours and it stinks. Well, listen, I'm not saying that that's not a real feeling, but at the same time, if you especially pay $20 for a game and you get 80 hours out of it,
you spent 80 hours for it, you got your money's worth.
I don't know what. I mean, I don't know what. Like,
what do you want?
There's plenty of other games. Just stop and refund it. Like you can refund games on Steam real easy. hit the button. After an hour, you don't like it, you can stop playing. You really can.
You're allowed.
Yeah, not everything needs to be 100-hour Baldur's Gate 3 campaign.
No, I don't think that's sustainable as an industry or for gamers or as an industry. I really don't. Like we're talking about them. Like Baldur's Gate literally crushed me. Like I played it. I just couldn't. Like I look at these games knowing they're like, so I'm playing, we should talk about this in the next segment, but I'm playing another game right now that I put off for a long time because I just couldn't turn on another 100-hour RPG. I'd started it and I was like, I can't do this right now. I need something more, moment to moment.
Yeah. I mean, LeRon and Josh, we talked about this at one point about Uncharted 4 and was like, that's a great game, but like it would have been better if it was like 10 hours shorter.
Yeah. I don't like when they artificially lengthen them either. Yeah. I agree with long combat.
I cannot stand that.
No.
I'm like, don't pad the damn game. Just give us the experience. Don't sit there and try to keep us sucked in. Like, and it's especially console games that do that, where they throw content in there just to say, oh, like the PlayStation usage was up by this much, but it was because you threw like 9 extra damn hours in a game that should have ended like at like the end of the third act.
I'm all for the shorter experience games, honestly, because I'll get through more games. Like, if
I
know your game's 10 hours, there's a good chance
is the sweet spot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
give you a few good gaming sessions or a week if you can only play a couple hours a night.
I almost ran around my apartment cheering when Obsidian came out and said Avowed is going to be a 30 to 35 hour RPG.
Yeah,
I was like,
no.
oh, thank God, because I played so much Pillars of Eternity when that came out. I can't do.
That's one of my most
30
played games on Steam is those two Pillars of Eternities. Honestly, I have hundreds of hours in both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, thank God, 30 to 35 hours, I can do this. I can do this. My partner
Those
won't be too upset with me for it.
The thing with those turn-based games take forever.
Mhm.
They take forever because every combat encounter takes forever.
It's just like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Jeez. I think that pre-show is a success. More about not games of the year. It's fine.
Are you sure? Are you sure you want to give this one up for free? This should be behind the paywall.
I mean, look, man.
Look what you did, Corey.
I know.
This one should be behind the paywall.
No,
like 30 plus minutes.
We give away one a month. Okay.
This is the one we're giving away. The one with the special guest.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a draw them in, man. It's a draw them in. You know.
Lost leader.
Look.
I don't know. I don't know. I kind of know a thing or two about marketing, and I feel like this is the one you actually hang on to.
Look, LeRon. Okay.
This is the perk. This is the perk.
They get plenty of other perks. Okay. Look.
I guarantee you people are gonna be in my mentions today. Well, after they hear this episode, talking about what LeRon's trying to deprive us. Like, well, what's his game here? He's a capitalist.
That's fine. I got a DM today that was pretty not great. So
was it about me?
No. Nope. Was
it about me?
No.
Oh.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you in between. So
okay.
Everybody, thanks for listening to this Boss Rush pre-show, and we'll see you on the main show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boss Rush Podcast, a great place to play games and be better. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Deerigan. Alongside me, as always, is the PC Muscle Race himself, LeRon Dawkins.
Hey, what's poppin'?
Hi, LeRon.
Hey, Corey.
You feeling good? Feeling as good as I am?
Yep. Feeling good. Feeling fine. How'd that song go? I forgot. Feeling good. Feeling fine, or something. I can't remember the line behind it.
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay. I know, man. You don't enjoy life. You don't know music. You don't watch TV. You barely see movies.
I watched Deadpool and Wolverine and I loved it.
Your second movie this year in the theaters. What was the last one you watched in theaters this year?
That was the first one I watched. Dude, the last movie I saw in theaters was the last 007 movie, I think.
No, you saw Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah, I did see Indiana Jones. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's bad that I can remember that for you. That's bad.
Josh is embarrassed to be here. Look, LeRon, I told you before we started recording, I feel like the trajectory of Iron Man 2 where Tony Stark's drinking that nasty green juice to stay alive, and then he found the what was it called? I almost said unobtainium, but that's the weird non-existent.
Unobtainium.
That's that weird thing that's an Avatar, right? The element that they're trying to mine. So that's how I feel. I feel like Tony Stark and Iron Man 2 at the end. Anyways, also here is my pal, the Jotun Toten Vault dwelling mayor of the Deepstone Crypt, God slaying, witness vanquishing Josh Finney.
You brought all my nicknames. I'm so happy.
I did. Remember when we had a shirt with all your nicknames on it?
I do. I remember when we had somebody write in for episode 100 who kept a list of every single nickname you gave me through the first 100 episodes.
I know. It was that was a time. I need to start doing that again. I need to start being more creative with nicknames.
It was very funny. I've also only been to the movies like 2 times this year, though, LeRon.
I haven't been to the movies that much. Walking
the pack.
No, well, hold on. My boyfriend.
I'm on Team Corey for this one.
My boyfriend is a cinemaphile, so like he loves going to the movie theater. But then again, like he teaches and his field is cinema and arts and entertainment and stuff like that. So he has to go. So like I've gone and seen quite a few movies this year. But I mean, like typically I just wait for those damn things to come out in digital release for home viewing, because I feel like my home entertainment viewing is much better than 90% of the movie
Yeah.
theaters are out here these days now.
Look,
because
I didn't spend all that money on this giant 65-inch TV and this nice soundbar to leave the house.
I just asked how many new movies you saw this year.
I've seen one, and it was great, worth it.
I didn't ask you how many times you got out the house to see a movie.
Oh, man.
I mean, I could tell you to go touch grass, but that'd be mean.
I touched grass today. I went for a walk during lunch at work.
You did not touch grass during your walk.
Sure, I did. I
You
walked.
literally stooped down and ran
like,
your fingers through the grass like Ghost of Tsushima.
I didn't like pick flowers or anything, but I walked through the grass to get to the sidewalk.
I'm sorry. I'm being really punchy tonight. I'm sorry. I'll tone it down. We have a special guest. Why am I?
We do.
Why am I showing out like this?
I know. We do have a very special guest tonight. Returning to the show, the CEO of Something Wicked Games, former Bethesda producer, storied game developer, Jeff Gardner's here. Jeff, welcome to the show. Welcome to our
back.
Welcome to our hot mess.
The first time.
Welcome to our hot mess.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if I can keep up with you guys. So my name's Jeff Gardiner. I worked on a couple of games prior to my 16 years at Bethesda Game Studios. One of them was Fantastic Four, and there's a big call out to the Fantastic Four movie in the Deadpool Wolverine movie, which I was really excited by, and I don't want to spoil for anyone. I started at Bethesda in 2005, and I worked on Oblivion and Fallout 3 and Skyrim, lead producer on Fallout 4, and then project lead of Fallout 76. So I have a lot of miles under my belt and a lot of gray hair from those projects, but they were all wonderful. So we'll answer whatever questions you guys are throwing at me tonight.
Awesome. We have plenty of those from the audience, and I'm sure from all of us. But we're very happy that you're here. This is great. Josh, you're the huge Elder Scrolls Fallout. You're probably the biggest fan out of all the three of us here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to focus too much on that for Jeff. But I think one of the big things I would wonder, as someone who, you were jumping back and forth from, the world of Tamriel to the Wasteland, what's the coolest thing about being able to do different projects in that world? Like, Cyrodiil feels like it was very inspired by kind of like medieval Europe architecture, and then when you get into Skyrim, it's very obviously Nordic and Scandinavian influenced. What are the benefits of getting to play in those different worlds? And I guess similarly in Fallout, getting to explore different regions of the East Coast.
It's funny. I was talking about this the other day about the influences especially the Elder Scrolls, because Fallout, we picked the locations for Fallout based on what we knew. So I'm sorry, my camera's so blurry. I look like I'm a soft filter from the soap operas in the 80s to hide my gray hair and wrinkles. It is not that. I'm going to try to turn it off again and fix it. So on the Fallout games, Emil Pagliarulo, who is one of my dear friends and was the design director of the Fallout, when we set them in DC, we are located in Rockville, Maryland. And so we set it in Washington, D.C. So we all lived here for Fallout 3. And then Fallout 4, we set it in Boston because Emil is from Southie, believe it or not, Boston, Massachusetts. So that's where those two settings came from. And then the Elder Scrolls ones was interesting. I came in on the tail end of Oblivion, and Cyrodiil is definitely like Normandy or Britain, very traditional medieval fantasy. I loved Oblivion. The reason I moved my family 2,500 miles to work on those games, it took a massive pay cut at the time, because I saw Todd pitch Oblivion at E3 and was like, I have to be a part of this. We got, so then I don't know what the thinking was or how they chose that location, but Skyrim was very Nordic, right? It's big mountains and snow, and we made a big push to make it feel very Nordic. Ironically, I was remarried and took my second honeymoon to Norway right after Skyrim, and I was like, oh, this is really like really like Skyrim. Anyway, and so when you go to those locales, we had the I think one of the most important things in a video game is to, and we talked about this a little in the pre-show, is to fall in love with what you're doing, and you pick your vibe and you try to describe it very simply. And at the time, believe it or not, it was Conan the Barbarian. Todd had a little Conan the Barbarian statue on his desk or in his office somewhere, and he talked about his love for the first movie. Now, we all saw that as teenagers, right? Like, I remember telling him my stories. Like, I was in my grandmother's house. I was like 12 years old and flipping through cable. And this was when the cable was like a box and a little slider that hooked up to the TV. We didn't even have it in my house at home. And my grandmother had it. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I turned on Conan right in the beginning. Like, I found it right in the beginning. And as a D&D nerd, I saw like that opening sequence with them riding through the snow and killing the village. And I just watched the whole movie, and it's a huge inspiration for that game and a lot of what I've been into my entire career. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but so those are the that was the and so when Todd said Conan Byrne, it's like, oh, you got to be kidding me, that's my favorite movie of all time. He was like, what? And I was like, oh no, I love it. So anyways, those things that stick with you when you're a kid, I think, are often inspirations for art in your adult life. That's sort of how we. So obviously, I'm still Wyrdsong, and a lot of Wyrdsong is inspired by stuff that I was into as a kid, old heavy metal lyrics and weird notions of how the world works, and it's been fun to work on.
Yeah, that's kind of where I want to go next with this is, how did those experiences working in worlds that were already, in some way, shape, or form established, before you got to Bethesda, or before Bethesda had the rights to develop Fallout, for instance. What is it like going and getting to create your own world after playing in somebody else's playground, so to speak?
Well, my career trajectory has been, my first game was a remake of Defender, which we were talking about Tower 2600 games. My second game was Fantastic Four, and trust me, you don't get to make a lot of things up when you're working on a Marvel IP. They're very strict, and this is even pre Disney owning them. They were still very strict. And then I go in, and help Todd and Emil and others at Bethesda, ship all those games. It's been super. One of the reasons I did this is because I just wanted to work on. I have a very deep creative impulse that over time in careers, it waxes and wanes. I was blessed to be able to, because I was originally a designer, and when I went to Bethesda, I was the producer of the design department. And so I got to work with designers and creatives. I got to shape a lot of those games, especially through Skyrim. I spent a lot of time playing the game. There was a small cabal of main tastemakers on Skyrim. That was myself, Emil Pagliarulo, who I mentioned, Todd Howard, and Joel Burgess, who is now also departed and at a studio called Soft Rains. And we would all meet in his office and figure out what we needed to fix on that game in the last 6 months. And it was a privilege and honor to be a part of that, right? And you can thank me for why Dragon Bones weighed so much, for instance, because I like something in the game has to be hard to carry. So he made it Dragon Bones, and that was literally got in a fighting match with the lead producer of that, like a shouting match. He's like, "This is terrible." It's like, no, not everything can be that way. Anyway, um, it's they're big, they're supposed to be heavy, and there's got to be a penalty to something at some point. You can't just give the player everything they want all the time. um, and man, the discussions we had about stealth, and I got into big arguments about, because you can kill your companions in that game with the errant spell. And I remember going, "This is so, please, please," and the designers made me keep it in. I was like, "No, guys, this isn't gonna go over well." And you load Lydia up with 400 pounds of crap, and she falls down a hole, and she's dead, and you lose all your shit. Like, anyway, it's really
We've all
cool.
been there.
Yes. Oh yeah. No. Trust me. Trust me. I lost those fights. And Fallout I didn't lose. Fallout 4, I was the lead producer, so they had to listen to me more. Um, it's cool to work on. It's also a little scary. You're creating things whole cloth. It's a shocking amount of work. To be honest with you, that I wasn't even really prepared for. We spent a lot of time working on back history and story and making connective tissues, because I don't know if it was in this, like you'd mentioned Persona. We were talking about that,
Mhm.
and these RPGs rely on like they live and die on story. Like all the like I will overlook shitty game mechanics for hours if I'm enjoying the story. hours
Absolutely.
in
Absolutely.
an RPG, and you have to have really compelling characters, a narrative that's pulling you through, and those are also things I remember most. Like, I don't remember all the rats I fought in a turn-based Fallout where I was like, oh my God, it took me 20 minutes to kill a freaking rat. But, I remember stories and elements, and you see that to this day with the Fallout TV show being super successful, right? And that was because of that was because of not even the characters, because they didn't use canon characters, a couple, Mr. Handy, but you that setting and tone, and it was enough connective tissue and glue for Jonah Nolan and the showrunners to make an amazing series out of, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that speaks very well, because there was another movie released this weekend based on a more action oriented game, which is a fantastic game. But man, that movie's being pilloried. it is being pilloried. So I haven't seen it, so I don't like to talk about things that I haven't seen. I don't like to just read the internet and agree with every opinion they have. Trust me. I think that's a dangerous hole everyone goes down at some point in their life. But and I was really honored that Fallout had done so well, because I was nervous, because Fallout's a weird IP. So it can be persistent if you don't know what's going on in that IP. It is super weird.
I love that you organically brought up the Fallout TV show, because that's one of the things I've kind of been wondering about. Like, what is it like seeing something that you worked on get adapted in a different medium? Like, do you get, even though I know you weren't at Bethesda anymore, like, does that make you nervous? Like, think about how a whole new audience is going to get exposed to this world and to, these characters, or do you see like some connective tissue to your games that you made? Like, I know I got a little scared when the announcement was, yeah, no, this show is going to exist in our universe of the games. And I'm like, oh no, that scares me a little, because I think that's a really slippery slope. Like,
Well, you've seen it done
comics and
badly.
graphic novels are one thing. I
Yeah.
think a 10-hour TV series is another entirely.
Well, you've seen it done badly so many times,
Right.
with either
That's
people
true.
picking the wrong things to focus on, or not taking it seriously enough, or taking it too seriously. Right? There's this real fine line where you're taking the content way too seriously, and then it's not fun, it's not engaging, or you're tongue in cheek the whole time, winking at the camera, because you also think they didn't respect it. And I will tell you this, and I don't think it's secret information. We were off. I know, because I was in the room in a lot of these talks, and I sat next to Todd for 10 or the 12 of the 15 years. Literally, our offices right next door to each other, and they people wanted to do a TV show. And I don't know if people know, but the board of ZeniMax at the time was all Hollywood. It was like not Michael. It was I'm going to space on a couple of them, but it was Jerry Bruckheimer, and oh yeah, Jerry Bruckheimer was on it. Les Moonves, the guy who used to run CBS. There was Harry Sloan, who is also, you can Google him later, is a very big Hollywood guy. Robert Altman himself. To see how my camera finally started working. Robert Altman himself was he's married to Linda Carter, so he used a lot of ties into Hollywood. She's fantastic, by the way. They So anyway, they had a lot of inroads there, and a lot of people asking to make these shows. And they said no constantly, no, 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 because we always were like, we looked at some of these at the time video game adaptations have been pretty bad, like a lot of them. And finally, when we heard about Jonah Nolan, and he was doing Westworld at the time, and obviously Christopher Nolan's brother, and we all loved all Christopher Nolan's movies. I was like, holy shit, dude, this is huge. And this was I was just one of many people chatting with Todd about this. I was far from making decisions on this stuff, but it was interesting to see that. And then when Amazon wanted to do it, it was fantastic, and we were like, how much better can this be? And then we found out he was a real fan of the games, like he played the games. I think he did some shoot or some trailer for it or something, they announced, and he talked about how he played the games before he got big in Hollywood when he was first out there and stuff. Anyways, you couldn't have a better person do it than someone who had played the games and took them seriously. And it shows them this. I mean, I love the show, and I couldn't believe the reception of it. And then it got nominated for like 16 or 17 Emmys or something. I was like, oh my God, this is beyond the pale. And it's great. It's fantastic. And it's scary. It's again scary though, right?
Mhm.
Like I pick up on all the little, I between Fallout 4, where again I was the lead producer on, it's Fallout 76, which I was a project lead on for 3 years prior to its shipping, and then about 2 years post it shipping. I was 10 straight years in Fallout. I spent a minimum of 40, I mean,
Good
like
Lord.
a minimum of 40 hours a week on Fallout, oftentimes 70, 80. It's the only game I played. There's a quote of me, and it was taken out of context a little, where I was at some E3 or something where I said I've played Fallout 4 for 400 hours, right? And that people thought, oh my God, it's a 400-hour game. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like when you're making
Yeah.
games, you play, you might be playing the same 1 hour 400 times, right? And that wasn't the case for Fallout, but it was just, you just start over and over and over again, and it was a decade. And that's why Wyrdsong, by the way, is not post-apocalyptic. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, I need to go back into Fantasyland. No way. So I picked, and then you watch it and like, listen, I'll be honest, like I'm texting with people, like, it's great. You're texting. I'm still buddies with everyone there. I'm texting with them. I'm seeing them at the premiere. It makes you sort of sad because I'm not there anymore, and I see Emil and Isvan and Todd at the premieres and stuff, and you're like, but I'm so happy for them, and honestly, for video games as a whole, we need video games. And when I started, we looked at I don't know if this is politically correct or not, but we were the redheaded stepchild of entertainment for a long time. When I started in early 2000s in Hollywood, I was living in LA. And I'd go to these parties and stuff, and I tell them I make video games, and you're like a passing curiosity, right? Like, and now when you say you work in video games, trust me, they'll talk to you more than they'll talk to some TV runners and other things, because video games have taken so much mind share and so much of the consumer spending. But anyways, at the time, it's just great to see that there's the stories and worlds we create are as respected as, like, I'm not comparing it to Star Wars or to Lord of the Rings. Please don't take this out of context, but they're in the conversation. The worlds we create are in the conversation now. There could be Fallout shows for, you know what I'm saying, fan fiction, all the rest for 50 years, just like Lord of the Rings. There really could be. All right. I'm not saying there will or won't be. I'm not a prognosticator, but it could be an IP that, your grandkids are playing. Like we're still talking about Lord of the Rings, and that was written in the 40s. So you just don't know.
Yeah, I like the thought.
I feel bad that LeRon and Corey are sitting here listening to me.
Look,
I have a question. We've heard with all the studio closures and stuff like that, and like a lot of like lackluster games have come out in the last 5 years. Let's just say, what was the I'm not going to ask you what your experience is like with crunch, but I think the question I want to ask is how best you were able to deal with it, because I think I believe every freaking studio out there has some type of crunch culture. I'm not saying they're anywhere as bad as they're all as bad as CD Projekt Red, for example, or as minimal as like some of the Nintendo studios. They have crunch, we know that, but they don't ever like really complain about it.
Yeah, this is one of those questions that my PR agent would probably tell me not to answer.
Oh, okay.
Give you some pass on, but no, I don't. I'm beyond. Like, listen, when I started in the industry, crunch was really bad, and this is going to sound like an old man telling you he walked uphill 20 miles to school through the snow, right? But where I was in LA, it was really bad. So I'll just tell you my personal stories with it, because again, like, people tell you stories all the time, and stories get exaggerated or under exaggerated depending on who you're talking to. So on the second game I worked on, I was the second person in that studio to have a kid, right? I was like 30, 31 years old. So in the whole studio, and there was like 35 people on the game, I was the second person to have a kid. So it was a culture of, basically young, often white dudes eating pizza and donuts, making games, right? And they definitely found people who loved games. Like, I grew up on games. I love games. I can tell you my whole origin story someday. It's long, and I can make it exciting. It's pretty boring. But so we were finishing this game. I'm not going to name which one, because I don't want to get this. I'm trying not to, like, it's a long time ago, but I would come in the morning. So Corey's going through this now with the 3-year-old, but when you have I had a baby, like a literally newborn, you don't sleep for like months, or you get 3 hours and you're like, man, I'm feeling good today because I got 3 hours, right? And the crunches back then were 6 or 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. Often people would stay in the studio, like they'd sleep there. Now again, you have single dudes like didn't give a shit, they're all but showered in days and no one cares, and all bleary eyed, just drinking coffee. I think Red Bull was barely even around. That's how old I am. But anyways, I had the executive producer from the publisher in my office every day when I showed up at 8:30 waiting for me.
Damn.
Giving me the snake eye. Yeah.
Wow.
So no, at Bethesda, there's two different kinds of crunches. There's implicit crunch where they tell you have to be here, right? And there's also death march crunches where no matter what you do,
bad.
Yeah, we call them death marches. No matter what you do, it's not going to end and it's not going to result in good results. But so those are the death march level crunches where you're just working hours and hours. And there's been so many studies on the productivity of this and how terrible it was, and it was a thing. People forget there was this letter there was a wife's letter written to EA that got out and went viral. So
I remember that.
I remember this.
Like this actually changed. Like the state of California got involved and changed the way Electronic Arts managed, because the stories that were the worst were the stories when I was in LA. I don't care anymore. This is so long ago. This is out of Electronic Arts. Those are the stories. We would be interviewing like junior designers and stuff. Often they come out of QA, and they made what I went through look like a candy land, right? Like, oh no. So anyway, so this is the early 2000s. Now, over time, what happens is then there's implied crunch. An implied crunch is not where you're mandating it, but every game I have shipped, there are people who love the game. We talked about this earlier, and who put their heart and soul into it, so they will put more hours in. So the problem there's two different types of crunching. There's I fucked up my schedule or what I promised someone, or I didn't understand how to properly allocate things, and now we have to all work hard because your producer, director, whoever is an idiot, right? Or a liar. And then there's I love this game. So then there's the other view is games are art, and art's never finished. And this is an important thing I think that gets lost a lot, right? Ask anybody who writes novels or paints little miniatures or works on TV shows or anything. Like, art is never really done. It's never perfect. And you can always find new grammar to fix or things to, new shading to put on the character you're working on or whatever. And then when you have a deadline, the only way you can do more work is putting more time in, because you have there's this date that's coming, right? And it's coming at this, and the only way is to go wide. So that happens in the implied crunch. And so there's always about 10, 20% of people who put a lot of hours in. Now what you do in a studio in Bethesda, I was always very happy with how it worked. And there was some rumors out there that came out a while ago, but that was in a different department that wasn't run by us. We didn't manage. But Bethesda, we worked hard, but we also were rewarded for those games, and we loved them. And that shows in the product, right? So the people who did that, it wasn't like you were forced to do it, but you did it out of love and care for the game. And the two things as a manager you have to do with those people is you have to make sure that they're rewarded well for it, and you help them when you can, and keep an eye on them. Because we've seen people burn out just by self-inflicted crunch. So anyways, that's a very long-winded answer. I've seen it a lot, and you want to, it's hard as a creative to go, this is due Friday and it's not quite done, but I have to put my pencil down. Right? It really is. And somebody who loves what they do is going to put more hours in. But you also have to protect those people to make sure that you're like, hey, this is good enough. It's time for you to go spend some time doing something else. Anyway.
I love hearing you say that like at a certain point you have to know when to put your pencil down. I used to do a lot of freelance video shooting and editing in my early 20s. And my mentor was one of those like absolute perfectionists. He'll stay up till 5 a.m. when we got to have something submitted at 8 a.m. Because he's going to work on it until the very last second. And it was something I had to kind of learn for myself, because I was never taught that. Like he was very much one of those like, it's never finished. It's never going to be perfect, but we got to get as close to perfect as possible. And I'm like, man, it's good enough. It's not going to get better. Like we're not going to get it any better. Me trimming, 0.2 of a second off of this transition is not going to make or break if this client decides to hire us for a full-time project.
No, and actually in video games, that 2 cents of a second can result in 100 other bugs that no one understood was going to happen because you took
Yeah.
that 2 cents of a second out. Because you're working on projects with hundreds now these days, sometimes thousands of people. So you check in something innocent, and oh my God, can that cause this ripple effect? So the one thing that happened at Bethesda a lot was we would balance around bugs. Now no one does that specifically. They don't. People at Bethesda are very smart people and they know their craft very well, right? But the problem is there's a bug in the code. And somewhere in the code, the gun damage is doing 2/3 what it normally does for whatever reason. Its armor resistance is too high, or bullet trajectory is off, or there's somebody fat fingered a number, a million reasons, right? Somewhere late in development, someone goes, "Oh, that's a bug. I'm going to fix that," and all the game balances shit in a day. And then the person or people responsible that don't know what changed often, and they're panicked, like, why am I getting killed so quickly, right? So this is the thing when these projects get big, is things like that can spiral out of control. So and then the other thing that struck me interesting is there's this thing we call, and I'm sure this is well known, but it's called the 80-20 rule. It takes, whatever percentage, whatever amount of time it took you to get 80% of the way towards your goal, the last 20% is going to take you the same amount of time. And I actually find that to be a little disingenuous, because my experience is it actually that you can never get to your goal. Every time you get closer, it takes you longer. So every percentage better you want to get takes even longer than it did to get to the first 80%. So of that last 20%, you go 80% through that last 20%, and this same rule applies again. And then you get 80% through the other 20%, you're taking these fractions and you're dividing way down. It's like the difference between a 4-minute mile, like a 4-minute, 5-second mile, and the difference in a 4-minute mile when you run. Is like those last couple seconds are really, really hard, and it's the same thing in any kind of art or game development. Like so when you're describing is towards the end, when you're shaving fractions of a second off, like, yeah, it will make a difference. And you have to ask yourself, are you competing with somebody else who's doing that? Because if not, stop working. Step away. And yeah, but that's what you saw often was the games where the whole is always greater than the sum of its parts. We put so much in those games, we couldn't do those last 5% because we had so many systems in the game. They were so interconnected with one another that you had to sort of step away at 80, 85%. But again, there was so much in those games, you get lost and you stop. You don't care. You don't care that the cloak's clipping through the pauldrons of the armor. You don't care because you're having so much fun in the game. Anyway, I think a lot about video games, and I can talk in an ADHD fashion all night long. So I'll try to stop myself.
No, that's great. I'd rather have this long winding answer than just like 3 or 4 words. Just
I just
how
love
I
what
tend to
I
be.
love what I do. I really love what I do. I can't describe. I very privileged and blessed to have be able to make games. Honestly, I just love it. I really do.
Let's keep the love train going then.
Okay.
Is there like a favorite I don't know, zone or like character storyline that you've gotten to do in your time, like out of
Well,
all your projects?
the first one that pops in my head is the Nick Valentine stories. I absolutely love the film noir nature of those.
Mm-hmm.
For the Elder Scrolls, and remember, these are just ones that I participated in. I definitely did not write these. Again, because I have a man crush on Emil Paglarulo. He did Dark Brotherhood and Skyrim and Oblivion, and those stories are so good. I mean,
My boy Lucian LeChance is in
yeah,
that storyline.
Emil has this unique ability to he understands that. Him and I talk a lot about this, and for me, the number one function of entertainment is to entertain. And I know that sounds crazy or so simplistic, but when I watch, read, listen to, or play something that doesn't entertain me, it doesn't matter how good it is, I'll get bored. Or just so we talked about Ghost of Tsushima, like at the end of the day, all that stuff we talked about, like, it's a fucking great game. Like it's a visceral feeling in your gut, right? And so this is I call it the Shakespeare trick, because like I am a big fan of Shakespeare. I named my company something with games is after Macbeth. Like, so Shakespeare did this too, where he put all these like esoteric salient things in, and there's all these people study Shakespeare for 400 years, right? Because there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. But at the time when he wrote those stories, they had sex and violence, and they were super entertaining, right? Like they're some of the best stories ever written because they were super entertaining. And so, but if you lead with the stuff that is the subtleties, you lose too many people. So, anyways, that's sort of one of the tricks. So Emil's so good at that with Dark Brotherhood and all the stuff he's contributed to in Fallout 4 and Starfield and his whole career. Honestly, he was on Thief games, and he's just fucking fantastic. So
Yeah, I've loved seeing Emil talk a lot about Starfield in the recent months. It's been fascinating to see him, do interviews or even share on socials, the design process and the kind of the thought process behind that game. When you said you spent probably about 5 years cumulative on Fallout 76.
yeah, three
And then
post and two, or three pre and two post. Yeah.
then went on to found something wicked.
Mm-hmm.
Was it hard to transition back from a live service game to a single player mindset?
Oh my god, dude, I was so happy. I was like, oh, thank God.
Like, and I guess it was kind of conversely, was
Listen,
it like really hard?
No, well, I had done majority of my, so I'm 20 couple of years in, 22, 23, the majority of my career is single player games.
Mm-hmm.
And I play mostly single. So I grew up in, again, like before multiplayer was a real thing other than putting quarters in an arcade next to some dude playing Street Fighter. So games for me are my alone time, right, to this day. So it's hard for me to play games. My wife gets really mad because she likes to play games together and stuff. And I was like, this is like a couple hours a day I get to myself. So the amazing thing about live service games was you were constantly in contact with the community, right? Now, even when it was bad, it was fascinating because you were constantly communicating with fans of your game, both, on social media, but also through event. Like we would have closed door events where we brought fans in and got feedback that I thought pre and post shipping the game. We did a few of them that I thought were really fun and successful. And that part of it I really liked. I really did, even when it was bad, honestly, because you're listening to people and you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you're just trying to do justice to the IP and represent gamers. And people love this stuff, right? They associate so much of their lives with these games. I do too. And you want to make sure that you're doing as much justice. You're never going to please everybody, but you want to make sure you're doing as much justice as humanly possible for the people who are really in your corner, right? Who want it. And single player games are different because you go in this hole for years and then you sort of like tease it out towards the end and you announce it. So it's a very different process. But again, like you control, like I think just because I'm a fan of the single player game is why I'm more akin to want to make them more like desirous to participate in that. And again, like the gas games, and for anyone who doesn't know, that means games as a service, and I think it's sort of a dirty word at this point, but it's basically the other dirty side of that is like those games live and die by monetization, and it's not just that people are greedy and trying to get rich; they're very expensive to run and maintain. So you have to make sure you're bringing in more money than you're spending, or it's just this common business sense that the game has to go away.
Yeah.
Right. So, and as a lead of that, so the other thing that happened over my career is I went to this level where I am responsible for P&L. It's called profit and loss. And you're looking at all these spreadsheets and trying to tweak little numbers to try to make sure you're in the black, you're not losing money. And that part of game development is it's very important, and it's also sort of soul sucking. Honest with you. So you just, I don't know. I just wanted to sort of go in a hole and make a really fun game, and that's what I've been able to do. leave me alone.
Oh man.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I see on social media. I'm a pretty frequent tweeter and Reddit lurker. Twitch lurker too. I see the vitriol that gets thrown towards game companies, but specifically towards studios that are making gas games. And we were talking on the pre-show about how hard it is for you to like really break through maybe like those top like 8, 9 games that people play. Like people spend so much time and money in games like Fortnite and Call of Duty, like for something to break through, I see a game like Helldivers this year that has successfully broken through that. And there's been a lot the last couple days about people being like, oh, they've lost 90% of like their monthly active users. And it's like, it's still charting top 10 week to week on Steam, like for hours played. Like, what do you, that is a massive success story. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
It's a
what,
massive success, and they're cyclical, and they'll put a patch out or a DLC, and they'll bring everybody back, and yeah.
I
Yeah.
just, I really wish there was a way for, and it's a Herculean, if not impossible task to like, to educate the public more on like what constitutes success. That it's not always just about like, oh, you don't have to be, number one on the Circana charts, or you don't have to be number one on the
No.
Steam charts or whatever for all these months. Like, not every game is going to be this out of nowhere hit like Baldur's Gate 3
Oh,
was.
no way,
Yeah.
no way. So I boil it down to two things. Well, there's critical and commercial success, right? So the people really liking your game and good reviews is, I think, to most people who make art or aren't probably the profit and loss people, the most important thing, right? You just want people to enjoy your game. There is something for commercial success though, because then that allows you to make more of those games or keep the studio together or whatever. So they sort of have to go hand in hand. And with that, there is two for the commercial part. There's two factors to me. There is, you have to spend less, you have to make more than the game cost, right? Like it's just simple math, right? There's a lot of factors there. Like there's huge percentage of Steam cuts, and then in the old days there was physical media, and they cost a ton of money. So you basic, but the basics is you have to make more money than it costs. So there's a lot of games that are like that come in like they're number 100 on Steam or something, but if they didn't cost more than they make more than they cost, they're successful, right? You're not competing with the Baldur's Gate 3s of the world, but there's a lot of these double A publishers and single and independent publishers. Like Hooded Horse is one of my favorites these days. They did Manor Lords. They did a couple newer games. I'm not going to remember the Nordland, and there's another one, but they put these games out. They sell a couple 100,000 copies, and they didn't cost a lot to make. That's wildly successful, right? But there's another one that a lot of people don't know about and don't talk about. There's expectations. So if you're a publisher, not only do you want to make your money back, you set a financial or fiscal expectation on what the game's going to bring in. Okay. And this could be wildly more than the game cost. Often is. They're pure like entrail reading, tea leaf reading prognostications. I cut the goat open and its entrails fell out, and it's going to make this money. There really is. Don't get me wrong. The finance guys are probably going to get DM tweets about that. There's math that goes into this. I'm saying they do comparisons and forecasting and stuff, but it is still it is because my experience of it is like I'm like, what are you comparing this to? Why are you saying this? Like so. Anyways, a lot of times, and what happens is these bigger publishers set their future budgets based on the expectations of what that game is going to sell. So even if the game ends up in the black, making money, if it's lower than the expectations, they consider it a failure. Newsflash.
My Dead
All
Space 2 remake.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, like you're like, why did this happen? Why are they making decisions? Because what they do is they forecast their spending in the next year, and they go, we're going to have I'm making money up, like we're going to have $100 million in the bank to make these to ship and market these 4 games, and they didn't make that $100 million. So now they're in trouble for the future games, even though that particular game was more than in the black. It made its money back and more, right? So that's the real dirty part of this is that it's the expectations that are put on games are often unrealistic.
So
That's
I guess I would kind of shift to,
sure.
uh obviously like the expectations from a giant publisher like Bethesda is a
Mhm.
little bit different than doing it on your own. How has that been like trying to navigate that now as a studio director?
Um, it's so we're a startup. Um, it's called Seed Series funded studio, right? So we set out to make a game. I mean, this is public knowledge, so I'm not, and I haven't spoken about it publicly at all. Really, we set out to make a big open world game, which cost a big amount of money, And we got our funding and set about doing this in early 2022 when the post-COVID glow was still. My joke is like you could walk out of your apartment and pick money off trees. Like if you were a pedigree game developer, it was not hard to get your game funded and money. This market is very different. So we had to do a round of layoffs in March, which was one of the most difficult things I've had to do in the games industry. I had to let go of people I very much cared about and friends, right? In a very difficult time to find jobs, and basically to do something called extend the runway, which means give us more time to find more funding, and we are still in the process of doing that now. We're still making Wyrdsong. We just had to pivot what that game meant and not expect to get like a massive check in order to finish the game. So it is. This has been some of the most rewarding experiences of my game career and some of the hardest experiences of my game career. And again, I shipped Fallout 76. So there you go.
Yeah. We're not here to rag on 76. You know,
No, it's
I
fine.
love the reversal that's happened on that.
Yeah, so do I. I again, like that. I get asked all the time. What people ask me, which my favorite game to have worked on, and in a weird sense, it's definitely 76 because it wasn't the one game that came out just as this mega hit, right? And we had to really fight to hold on to that game, to keep it funded internally and to turn it around. And I hope I contributed in some small amount to that. I helped with Wastelanders and Brotherhood of Steel. I love story based content, and I was like, we got to put a story in here. Like, I don't know what to say. You guys are trying everything else. Yeah, and at some point, we just got to bite the bullet and put a story in. And thankfully, Fer Boisdon, who passed away about a year ago, but he was the lead designer in Wastelanders, and him and I just stuck in. And a couple other people there, Phil Nelson and some others, really just hunkered down and shouldered Wastelanders and got it out in COVID. And that was an unbelievable day when that came out. People loved it. I was like, trust me, after patch after patch of, you thought Corey thought his DM was bad. I'll show you some of mine. They were not good. Oh yeah, not good. Oh dude, I didn't get too many direct, but I got one that was like I'll never forget it. Like I should have printed it and framed it. But again, like the way I used to say is, listen, I'm not even mad at the person who sends those because like they love the property, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you don't care about something, you don't care to send a nasty DM. It's because you care, right? And these weren't like when we talked about the one we talked about earlier was fucking bullshit. This is because we put out a game and we fucked up. I mean, there's no other way to put it, right? Like the game was not in the great state and we needed to fix it, and we spent a lot of time doing the wrong thing until we finally got Wastelanders out. Honestly.
I really appreciate the candor that you've had about 76's up and downs.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to I didn't want to pry into that too much because I know that can be, a bit of a not sensitive topic, but I know that different people react different ways to things that had to be fixed.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And now it's doing great. And there's a new creative director on it, John Rush, who was the art director on 76 while I was on it, and he's fantastic. And again, the TV show, I mean, the number of eyeballs that went on Fallout were crazy. Oftentimes you see 76 more played now than any Bethesda game. Like it's more played on a lot of platforms than even Starfield.
I have a friend, him and his wife play at least 2 or 3 nights a week. Like that's awesome. That's their game together. And for years,
I'm very proud of that game. It's super unique. It's got really awesome building elements in an online shooter, right? Like it's really the camp system and stuff in that game are still very unique. You can bring them with you. I honestly love it. It was fantastic. It was buggy, and we didn't have a story. Like we set these. There was 2 problems with it. We set expectations for Bethesda games having stories, and it looks exactly the same as Fallout 4. So people were like, "Why is this not just Fallout 4 multiplayer?" And it wasn't. Right. And and then the bugs were very apparent. Let's be frank. I'm not speaking about Starfield, but prior to that, we shipped buggy games. I mean, I'm not pretending that we didn't.
We've all seen the memes.
Yeah, but people overlooked those bugs. They're having so much fun. But in 76, they weren't having fun, so the bugs stand out a lot more when you're not having fun.
Right.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah. I guess if I had one more thing to ask you before I get off my soapbox. I just lost my complete train of thought. You've talked about how you oversaw it from its inception, the first 2 years, and through Wasteland. Was it hard to hand that project off to someone else, like to hand like your baby off to somebody? I just
Well,
because I guess it's
listen,
not like a single player game.
there's two sides to this too, right? Like
Yeah.
this will talk a little bit more about the games industry, and there's obviously like there's a lot of I don't want to get into the unionization, but a lot of studios have unionized in the last few months, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about that. To be honest with you, the so it's my baby because I was blessed and honored to work at Bethesda Game Studios. But at the end of the day, it's not my baby; it's their baby, right? I worked on it. This game, Wyrdsong, is my baby. That game, but it's important to call that out because, listen, I if you were in Hollywood and I don't know, people know about residuals, right? But I don't know if they know the extent of that. So the first director on the first Law and Order, that TV series that's had 1,000 spinoffs, been around for 150 years. The first director who directed the pilot of Law and Order gets a check from every episode of Law and Order and every spinoff that's ever been made for the last 150 years.
Jeez,
That's
that don't happen in the games industry.
No,
You're gone. You're gone. And
Yeah.
we're not even seeing it in TV as much anymore with the pivot.
no, there was a big fights in Hollywood about that over the the streaming and stuff. So anyway, at the time I left, I was ready to leave Bethesda. Honestly, I was ready to go. COVID was fantastic as a gamer, and it was also horrifying as a human being. Sense at all. Like I played a lot of 100-hour role playing games in COVID. But it sort of made me realize, like I always had this fantasy. I was like, I'm going to retire, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just play all the games I ever wanted. And then I got a chance to do that in COVID, and I was like, it's only fun for so long. Like, I'm going to go out and touch the grass every once in a while. Like, Jesus. But no, I'm like I said, I'm proud of the work I did there, and I'm really proud of what the folks have done with it since. It's great to see it continue to success. Like, I'll be honest with you, you get a little sad. Like, I was like, what would have happened if I was still there in that Fallout show, and what would have been my involvement in it? But at the end of the day, like it obviously did great. So I'm happy for everybody there. I really am, and I'm happy to have moved on too. So both are true.
I've got one more question. It's not so much a question. It's more like what advice would you give to anyone that's currently in like like as a developer and stuff like that, and seeing all these ups and downs that are going on, particularly like like Xbox is catching it right now, and a few other companies out there like Embracer Group needs to get their act together and stuff like that. Ubisoft, like what are you doing? So yeah, just any words of advice for any of our developer friends that may actually be listening.
Sure. Man, it is this is the biggest. I was talking to somebody today I can't name, who's been in the industry and active in business development for a long time, and I really enjoyed this conversation with this guy. He's like, it's the worst I've seen, and he's been in the industry since '92. He's like, there's been nothing like this
my entire life.
Yeah, exactly. There's been nothing like this. And since 2002 when I started, I agree. Listen, the cost of games has risen dramatically. And listen, games still make what $180 billion a year or something, so the money's still there. It's just going to fewer and fewer properties. There's this huge COVID caused this huge, and it's funny because over the last couple of years, I wish I could have seen it coming more. You saw it coming, but not to this extent. So not only did COVID cause a bump in sales of games and amount of hours played, like huge, right? I think that's one of the reasons why Wastelanders was successful, because again, it sort of followed on the heels of Doom. Remember when Doom Eternal was released and was beyond the pale hit because it was like the first game come out in COVID, and then Wastelanders came out. So you saw this huge upsurge in not only playtime in sales but investment, right? So all these people were chasing the money train, which again, like any bubble, sooner or later they burst. And it has clearly burst. And the cost of games has gone through the roof. You saw the leaks from Sony, how much those games have cost. The margins are so thin. And when the budgets are that high and the margins are so thin, people get really skittish. They get really skittish because it just takes one minor hiccup, like bad competition that day, like I don't know, solar flare that takes out satellites, and your game doesn't sell, and you've done a lot of money. Like, who knows? There's a lot of variables there. So anyway, and then what you see on the backside is what I didn't see coming. I don't think anyone really saw. It's funny. A friend of mine at one of these big publishers definitely identified it. You saw there was so many games delayed because of COVID, and they all came out at the end of last year. That's why we're all still playing. That's why we're all mystified of what our game of the year is. We're all barely, like everyone is still going through their backlog from 2023, right? And so that hurt game sales badly because they all came out at the same time. The number there was like something like 50, 60, 70 AAA games came out last year, and the vast majority of them did not hit their numbers. Not only their expectations, but their sales. So it's like really bad. And you're seeing big publishers reeling from that. You're seeing very, very skittish on investment. And it all makes sense, there's no blame. And the problem is that like most sea changes or tides, they affect the little people the most, and the little people in this industry are the game developers. They just are, and they're being thrashed about, and it's scary. It's really scary for them. Now it will pass. It will pass. No one knows when. The same person today said he's seeing green shoots, but it's still very early. And overall, the famine is still here. So while the field is still fallow, he's seeing hope. But again, like those green shoots can take years, like to actually grow into something. So it's really interesting to see. A lot of these publishers are going to have no catalogs for 26, 27, 28. They're going to have almost nothing to actually put out. And that's tough on a publisher too.
Yeah, kind of like basically Sony's looking at a conundrum right now.
Yeah, they're definitely looking at it. I mean, you've seen how we talk about the drip drop of certain games, but even having like one major release a year is better than none.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Right now,
listen, not to be pure doom and gloom, but so the things that'll be interesting is how Star Wars Outcasts, Outlaws, whatever it's called, does, how Assassin's Creed, Dragon Age, Space Marine. So how the big hitters this year do. That'll be the first, I think, thing. So if those sell well, I think they'll get more bullish next year. If they don't, it's just going to stay the same or get worse. Then you're going to have some. I have no insight into this, so please don't take this as me breaking NDAs or anything. Sooner or later, they're going to want to do another console cycle. And if they think that consoles are going to sell the same as they did in COVID, that is never going to fucking happen.
No.
So if they do these expectations, if they cut the goat open and read its entrails, and they're saying we're gonna be 10% over what we sold in COVID. Oh my God!
I feel like COVID console sales for sure were an anomaly because there was so much there was so much working against the consumer that it was insane. Like people were still like when the pandemic hit, and like we had the Series X and S and the PS5 drop and stuff like that. People were still making their actual regular paychecks and stuff like that. But once the actual like employers started like cutting back hours or even shrinking down workforce because hey, like nobody was in the building, so like why do we have to allot for like all these workers and stuff like that. And then it basically like the economy, there was like I want to say there was like 7 different factors going on with the economy all at once during COVID. And and yeah, so people
you had stimulus checks too. You had
that too. Yeah, that too.
You had stimulus checks. You weren't spending. You didn't need to fill your tank with gas. You weren't going out to eat so much. Once you started DoorDash, and the guy that almost put me in the poorhouse. But you're seeing you weren't going out to concerts. You had so much more disposable income. So a $500 console was like no brainer. Yeah. How many hours? I was like, oh my God, I'd get one immediately. How many hours am I going to get out of this? Right? It was great. Mm-hmm. But again, like plus you have like PC and all these other competing platforms now. Cloud gaming is actually sort of a thing now. Like I don't know what they expect to happen when they finally release these, but if it is, we're going to meet or beat COVID sales, that's fucking madness.
Yeah.
I saw, particularly in my friend group, I saw a huge shift away from consoles during COVID, funny enough, to PC gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you couldn't get them.
Most of my friends went out and just built a PC at that point.
Yeah, because the only thing that was hurting them was getting a graphics card. That was the only thing that was hurting them. Thank God, Nvidia was still producing the 1060 because that was like a champion for like 5 years for Nvidia.
Yeah. Yep. In PC gaming is now the dominant. Like there was a few, like when early days, I remember people would get another thing. PC gaming's dead. It's going out like that.
It was a thing for nerds.
It is over 50% of gaming now. Like, so
I don't know who told that lie.
PlayStation is that's why PlayStation is releasing games on Play because so many
Yes,
people
yeah, yeah. Sony, yeah. Which good
It's
move.
a no-brainer, you know, releasing
Yeah.
a 4-year-old game and it shoots to #1 for all platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait till Ubisoft games come off Steam. I don't know what their exclusivity is on Epic, and you'll see. And again, they're talking about the Grand Theft Auto is probably going to delay their game. They have always delayed their games.
Yep.
And so you're going to have the same thing, the double dip, like I did. I got on console because I had to play it, and I got on PC as soon as it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Rockstar.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I
Especially good games.
Especially
I can be happy to say I haven't double dipped in quite a few years. I think Monster Hunter Rise was the last game I double dipped.
Great game.
Yeah, especially if GTA 6 gets delayed, like, or on PC like they normally do, like it's gonna be the 30 frames to 60 to uncapped is what people are gonna
it's gonna be a huge jump.
Yeah. Because
but we've seen PC gamers they're a stubborn bunch. They'll wait.
Yeah.
They won't buy a console. They're gonna wait. So.
Oh no, I don't like.
Just ask LeRon about Alan Wake 2.
Quality these days that you can afford to wait.
Yeah. The only reason why I have a PS5 is because I'm a podcaster.
Yeah.
There's the Sony exclusives are amazing. So are the Xbox exclusives these days, honestly. But the thing is, you can get them on PC. So.
Well, I remember calling it out on my Crossroads podcast show back when it was primarily a PlayStation podcast show. I remember calling it out that like games like Ratchet and Clank, Returnal, Ghost of Tsushima, they were all going to show up on PC, and I had people like hate mongering me in my comments saying, "Oh, that will never happen. Look where the fuck we're at. I called this shit."
I don't know why anyone gives a shit who plays their games where.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say.
Of all the things in the world to get upset about, this is low on the fucking list.
Yeah, I always
you've got a pretty great life if that's one of the priorities to complain about.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You're enjoying a game on a console I don't own. Fuck you! Like that's insane.
I tell our audiences all the time, like when a game comes out on a console that's not absolutely dedicated to come out on or a platform and stuff, like the gamers are fucking winning. Shut the fuck up. Like
especially now with like
the gamers are winning.
Especially with like cross-platform play and cross-save and all these things now too, right? Like you don't even have to worry about, oh, my friend is playing Call of Duty on PlayStation and I have an Xbox, and our buddy has he's playing on the Steam Deck or whatever. Like
that's the guy that needs to walk out in the traffic.
Jeez.
That did not come from my mouth.
Oh, that did not come from my mouth either. That was LeRon.
I tell people all the time. They know my socials are in the show notes. They can come find me anytime. We can have this conversation.
Oh, jeez.
But I do want to answer a little more directly. Like, I really feel bad for people who are starting their career right now, or early in it. It's hard and it is scary. And there are still people. There are still people hiring. Jobs are still out there. The thing that's scary to me is a lot of the remote work from bigger studios is waning. I saw this thing, like most CEOs, they're trying to kill it by 2026. I don't understand that at all. I don't want to get into that right now. I like, if you do good work, who gives a shit when or where you do it? It mystifies me. This sense of control and dominance that certain people have to exert on one another. That's just my take. We are full remote, and my staff does fucking amazing. Like, it's not I don't need to babysit them. I treat adults like adults. It's amazing. But anyways, I feel terrible for them, and it's really hard. And you're going to see a brain drain. You're going to see people leave this industry. Watch. You're going to see a brain drain. They really are.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network. Let's talk about what we've been playing. Jeff, you are our esteemed guest. I'd like you to go first.
I am playing 2 games. My comfort food game is Grim Dawn, which is an AARPG on PC from a group called Crate Entertainment that came out in 2016, and I absolutely love it. They're actually actively patching it, and I'm going to put a new DLC out for it. Don't think until early next year. I'm not 100%. But I saw that, grabbed the patch, and it's an old school single player offline Diablo like game. I absolutely love. It's super grindy, math nerdy, and all that. And the other game that I'm playing is I just spun up. I'm about maybe 10 hours into Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader, which is a game by Owlcat that came out. They're the folks that did the Pathfinder games there's two of them over the last decade. And they put out this, I'm a big Warhammer nerd. And after my 250 hours in Baldur's Gate 3, I could not stomach another big long RPG. So I didn't play it when it first came out. And then again, Emil Pagliarulu, who I mentioned, told me how great it was over and over again. I finally picked it up, and it's got its hooks pretty deep in me now, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's what I'm doing.
Nice. LeRon, still teching it up.
Yeah, Tekken in the Dead Space remake. As we get ready for our book club coming up real soon here.
Yeah, I'm happy that Dead Space got picked for book club.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. It actually gave me an excuse to come to book club.
Yeah.
Because all those other games y'all pick, I'm like, I'm not playing that.
Don't worry, LeRon. I made the sacrifice and played Paper Mario for you, so you didn't have to.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Paper Mario is a great game.
I appreciate that. Are there any announcements for what's up for vote coming soon for book club? By the way,
probably.
I mean, if you don't know off the top of your head, don't go looking for it.
I mean, Ocarina of Time is our next one. So
I mean, I'm in the love. I'm in right now at Tekken 8. I'm just in the love-hate relationship. Like I'm trying my best. Like I just looked at my because like there's a whole bunch of like communities out there that are putting up they're helping people like track their stats and everything, how they're doing on Tekken and stuff like that. I found out I've got more than a 50% win rate in my matches and stuff like that, which is good. But then it also showed me that based off of like the other players that are out there in my ranking, even though it feels like I'm just getting clapped and just losing all the freaking time, like I'm actually in a high percentile for my rank, which that's reassuring. And I'm only 8 promotions away from getting the max rank. So it's one of those things like, man, it's like I'm just getting beat down into the dust, but like it still shows that I'm better than like more than 49% of the other people out there.
So are we signing you up for Evo now or later?
No, even though I got a friend that he's trying to get me into some of these local tournaments. He's like, man, you're going to blow these people out. I'm like, yeah, you say that. And then, I go in there and look like a chump. And then you're like, man, what happened? Because, just because like, hold on, I got my Steam open right now. Hold on a second. Let me see.
LeRon's going
That was the old Halo LAN days for me.
Since Tekken 8 has been out, I have sunk 246 hours into this game.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak is 294 hours. So I'm getting ready to eclipse like one of the games I play all the fucking time. Like you guys know, Monster Hunter to me is like Destiny to you guys, So like the fact that I'm getting ready to eclipse one. Well, actually, honestly, like it's more time than that because like this is my Steam time for Monster Hunter Rise. I need to turn on my Switch and see how long I put in Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. I'm pretty sure it's 100, almost 200 hours on that. So it was more like 400 hours, but still, like the fact, it's just one of those things. But yeah, like I got into the early access for the Mecha Break game, but every time I try to get onto the playtest, like the freaking servers are undergoing maintenance, and I'm like, huh? Like you guys said like this shit was open for the whole month. How come every time I try to log on to it? Because I want to get my Zone of the Enders nostalgia going on, and I want to see this game in action. Like all I've been watching is just videos of it. I'm like, come on, man, let me in. I want to play. And I've reinstalled Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate onto my ROG Ally because I really need to get that because rumor has it like Final Fantasy 16 and Rebirth are getting ready to be announced for PC.
That wouldn't shock me.
We know for sure 16 is getting announced real soon because someone broke the code and found this code name, in like in the Steam database.
They've also like talked about it pretty publicly saying that they're working on it.
Yeah. Well, Square just wants to get the money they thought they were going to get on the PlayStation for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, Final Fantasy 16 did all right for the PlayStation, but I feel like at this point, like there was other things going on when Final Fantasy 16 happened. So Final Fantasy 16 had I want to say a good 4 weeks, to bask before hell just dominated it. Like all these other games came out and stuff like that. People were transitioning back to Elden Ring and transitioning back to Baldur's Gate and stuff like that. So it was just one of those things.
Didn't Zelda and Diablo come out around that time too?
Which Zelda?
In a 3-month span last year, you had Tears of the Kingdom, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 16, and Baldur's Gate 3 all come out.
Yeah, so I mean, it was stacked. I remember the days. I legit remember the days. Back when, not even when I was a young gamer, back when I was just like a young adult gamer. I remember when like you had 4 big games come out a year, not 17 big games come out in a year.
Right. Let alone 3 months of each other.
Yeah, and I don't know, I guess it's something to be said. I probably will never develop a video game or whatnot, but I tend to think that a lot of these companies need to focus. And we talked about this on episodes of Boss Rush before. A lot of these companies that focus on maybe one AAA title a year, and doing some, I guess, double A's. I never heard that terminology until I saw it running around the internet, and I was like, there's no such thing as a double A or a quadruple A game. Y'all just talking out y'all's asses and stuff like that.
Super annoying, but basically, yeah, middle budget games.
Yeah. Because middle budget games were is honestly where it's at. It's like a haven for gamers, like active gamers and stuff like that. You don't have to spend like $70 for this game. You can spend 30, 40, or $50 and still have an enjoyable experience. Indies are out at $20, for the most part. Well, I don't know. Indies are starting to creep. I've noticed some of these indies now starting at $40. I was like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
What are y'all doing? And I'm not talking about you, Jeff. I will pay any price tag you put on your game.
Thank you. You heard it here.
$99.99.
If it comes out at $110, that'll be the last $110 game base game I pay for.
Jeez.
All my years of Destiny expansions have prepared me for this moment.
Jeez. Josh.
I've just been doing New Game Plus and Persona 3 Reload. Getting ready for that DLC next month. And about ready to wander into the Shin Megami Tensei 5 waters. It's been sitting on my desk for a couple months now, just staring at me. It's like the Green Goblin mask. Every time I think about starting a new game, it's like, hey, I'm right here. I'm talking to you. It's a little creepy. Like Willem Dafoe might or might not be talking to me. So I should probably go ahead and play that just to stop it. But
apparently you can buy that now. That Green Goblin mask.
I very, very publicly pondered if I should buy the helmet and the replica pumpkin grenade.
Jeez.
And just walk around the apartment complex yelling out random lines from any Willem Dafoe movie I can think of.
Well, I've been playing Ocarina of Time for book club. I'm in Death Mountain. So I don't know. It's fine. Ocarina of Time.
It's fine. One of the best games ever made. It's fine.
So here's the thing. Okay. I've told this story before, but
I'm going to recuse myself.
I'm going to tell it again. I've only played Ocarina of Time one time, and that was way back when it came out, and I was very young, and I had never played a Zelda before. Okay. And I got to the Shadow Temple as adult Link, and I didn't know you could go back in time because I was a dumb kid. And so I stopped playing because I was incredibly frustrated. And then I played Majora's Mask, and I loved Majora's Mask. So I was like, well, I should probably go back to play Ocarina of Time. And I bought the guide for both games, and I played through both games with the guide. And that was the last time I played Ocarina of Time. Now, granted, I've tried several times since then, but I don't know. Better Zelda games have come out since then, in my opinion. And Josh, I know you don't like it. Twilight Princess. I like Twilight Princess a whole lot. But I also see why people often compare Twilight Princess to Ocarina, because it's essentially almost the same, minus the wolf stuff. I've also been playing Wolfenstein: The New Order uh, because, as people know, I love Indiana Jones, and Machine Games is making that. So I'm going back to, you know, obviously Wolfenstein. Those Wolfenstein games are much more violent than Indiana Jones, I assume, is going to be. Uh, but I wanted to get refamiliarize myself, and I gotta say, for a 360 game, essentially. I mean, I'm playing the Xbox One version on Series X, but that is still a great looking game and a great feeling game. And the story is really, really just awesome. I love the story they're telling. I love how everything is playing out. And I will probably have that finished this weekend. I'm going to jump right into Old Blood because I love this game. And I forgot how I was checking my achievements, and the last time I played it was the 360 version with the 4 discs, which is crazy to think
That's
about.
crazy. Yeah.
So
4 discs.
yeah, it's crazy.
Machine Games are fantastic game developers.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I love it. I mean, I love their when they were Starbreeze, right? Like the Chronicles of
Yeah.
Riddick game was great, and
Yeah.
you know, I can't wait for Indiana Jones. I'm even more excited now than I was, which Josh knows.
Listen, the man doesn't see many movies, but he does see Indiana Jones.
Yes, I do. We're gonna move on. I want to know what everybody's. We're all in different places in our lives, and games have brought us to different places in our lives, right? Like, Josh and I are friends because of Destiny. Um, Oddly enough, doing this stuff about video games got me my real life job, which is insane to think about. Um, but I think we all have taken a trajectory in our lives because of games, and I kind of want to know what games placed us in on that trajectory. And Jeff, you you develop games, so I'm sure there's a lot of influence there, right? I mean,
It's funny. I sort of got lucky to get into this industry. If I look back on, so this is going to sound really. If I had to say which game, I thought about this question before, and I have some stock answers for it. But if I look at, if I look at what I grew up on, um, there's a couple that stand out the most, and one of them is going to be obvious, especially in so one of them is honestly Baldur's Gate 2. But prior to that is a game called Peter Molyneux games I used to love, especially Populous. Yes, yes. I am a huge I so my story on Populous was I got it on the Nintendo 64, and I was a freshman in college, and I was living in the dorm. It was my first semester, and I started playing it at like 8 or 9 in the morning, and my roommate goes to class, and then there's a heartbeat that plays during that. So if anyone doesn't know what Populous is, you're a god sim. So you're playing a god with all these little people, and you can make volcanoes and do all this stuff. And you're basically, I don't even know what the end result of that game was, but it didn't matter. I was just having so much fun, like blowing people up and doing volcanoes. And it's this tiny old, like it's not the. I mean, again, like if you look at the graphics, I'm sure it was terrible, but at the time it was a very unique type of game. And I grew up on like Defender and Pac-Man and Asteroids and stuff. So this was the first game that like other than Ultima, for which a lot of people who make role playing games cite. This is one of the first games that sort of like the genre. You could see the genre changing. And anyways, I was a freshman in college. I was tripled in a tiny dorm room. It was terrible. My one roommate left, and I started playing the game. There's this heartbeat that plays, and it slowly increases as you get further and further in the game. Boom, 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 and it's very hypnotic. And he came back at like 5 o'clock, and I was sitting in front of the screen, and he was like, "Dude, it's 5 o'clock." And he was like, "Have you moved?" I was like, "I haven't moved." It was like 7 hours later, I hadn't moved, right? And so like I saw games in a different light then, like in a way you can express these different notions and ideas. And then honestly, so I when after that, so I was a PC guy as a kid. I had this computer. If I told you how much memory in it, you it was literally like I think 24 megs or something. Anyways, I didn't have a PC for a long time. And then I got one after. So I got a degree in creative writing. I went to LA. I, like everyone who goes to LA and tries to be a writer, I ended up bartending. I bartended for a number of years and then decided to go back to school for a technical degree. And I realized I hadn't touched a computer in a long time. So I was like, well, that's going to be a problem. So I went to Fry's Electronics and bought a computer. And I saw Baldur's Gate 1 on the shelf and I took it home and I proceeded to play it 18 hours a day for 6 straight days. Right. I literally just ordered Domino's pizza and 4 liters of Diet Coke and ate Domino's pizza and chugged Diet Coke and played Baldur's Gate. So when I talked to a guy in a party about Baldur's Gate and he ended up being at making games, he got me my first job and he's actually now my business partner. So I got to give it
Nice.
Populous and Baldur's Gate.
Wow.
It's a true story.
Wow. That's awesome. Man, Domino's and Diet Coke. That sounds like Halo.
Yeah, I used to drink 4 liters of Diet Coke a day. That was crazy.
Oh.
You have the Red Bull thing.
Oh,
yeah, it's
boy.
I got it with Diet Coke.
Man.
Not healthy.
No.
Not healthy.
No. Man. Man, Domino's, like a stack of Domino's boxes reminds me of Halo LAN parties for
Yep.
sure.
That was high school for junior high and high school for me.
Yeah.
It's funny. We played Baldur's Gate in COVID because I played it in it was like a blur. Does that make sense? Like I just was this like fog, just playing it hours and hours and hours a day. So I replayed it in COVID, and there was a couple false starts because the Beamdog versions came out that were remastered that weren't like 480 by whatever, like tiny horrible resolution. So they rezzed them up, and I played both Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 all the way through all the expansions in COVID because I think I literally wanted to relive that experience. I was like, oh, here we go.
Wow.
I didn't know the pizza. My wife wouldn't allow that.
Oh. Well.
So it wasn't quite the exact experience.
No, but I was glad they held up because a lot of times when you play those older games, like I think your it's Ocarina of Time. I think your Ocarina of Time is part of that, right? It's hard to go. Video games especially are hard to go back to because the technology has changed so drastically. I think that's the other thing that's happening in the industry now. It's like I'm playing an 8-year-old game. Games from 10 years ago, if the gameplay is good, it doesn't really matter, right? I think that's the other thing that's actually ironically sort of happening. And like you don't need the cutting edge graphics in every game, and we're not going from 2D to 3D or offline to online. Like there hasn't been this huge leap forward in technology. It's been these slow iterations. So you're more than comfortable going back to like just playing Destiny forever or just playing, whatever game that came out 4 or 5 years ago. It doesn't matter. But back in the day, like 4 or 5 years even, you'd be like, the difference between Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 is pretty traumatic actually alone. So,
Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, when I sat down and started thinking about this, there's probably like 2 or 3 games I can point to. The easy answer for anybody my age, I think, for why we fell in love with video games is Pokemon Red. My very first video game I ever owned was that. We were in Boston for a cousin's wedding or something, and her now husband was like, hey, to 6-year-old Josh, hey, why don't you go hang out down in my basement? And it was like decked out as a game room, and I'd never seen a video game before. And he had an N64 with Rogue Squadron in it. And I fell in love with it so much that like he was not hanging out at his own, like before the wedding party. He was down there playing video games with me. So his mom and my grandma later on that weekend after the wedding went to a flea market, went shopping, did something, bought me a black and white Game Boy Pocket and Pokemon Red because the person at the counter swore it was about to be the next big thing. And I think my life changed forever. Like I fell in love with it. Every friend I had in grade school was because of Pokemon. It was because of Pokemon. It was because of N64. And then like that's kind of a straight through line for me. I get to junior high and, it wasn't the cool thing to like video games then. It was like, oh, that's a thing for kids. So here I am, first day of 7th grade, and I met one of my now very closest friends because I found out that he liked Halo and I liked Halo, and Halo 2 was coming out in like 2 months. So between that and Green Day's American Idiot, we became best friends over it. And I don't think there was a single Friday night after that from the 7th grade until after he was married that we were not hanging out playing Halo or Rock Band or something like with our whole group of friends. Like even once, like none of us had money for Xbox Live. I had dial-up internet. Like we had the money, but I had dial-up internet. My grandparents, who I lived with, did not believe in DSL. They didn't understand it when I tried to explain it. I begged them to put in DSL. And to the point that when they finally did, I went out, bought this adapter, explained to them, no, I'm not playing with, strange older men online. I am playing with my group of friends, and that's it. But for me, I think when I look at probably the most important game, like, yeah, there's Halo 2. Like, I probably don't fall in love with video games the way I do if I don't play Halo 2 right when it comes out. Corey, you and I were talking last week about the closure of Game Informer and about what a big role that played in our lives growing up. I still remember very vividly. It's the only issue I remember actually coming in the mail, but it was the issue for Oblivion. I had just played Morrowind for the first time maybe a month before that. And it was the reveal of Oblivion, and it was the best looking game I'd ever seen in my life. I was like, "Oh my god, this is incredible." And it said it was coming to the next Xbox, to the PlayStation 3, and to PC. And I'm like, I don't own any of these. I have a GameCube. I mowed lawns and did as many odd jobs as I could in that neighborhood for about 7 or 8 straight months to save up the money. I remember watching the reveal of the 360 with, who was it? Elijah Wood on Spike TV or something. I remember seeing it on TV, begging my grandma to drive me to the mall so I could get the pre-order. I got red ringed on day one, but it was literally all for one game that then does not launch on day one. It was my first experience with a game delay, and explaining that to a 12-year-old kid, I did not understand why this was happening to me. And, I go through the red ring, and the game I really want wasn't there. I didn't know about game delays at this point. But that March 2005 afternoon was so glorious. It's the first time I ever convinced my parents to take me out of school early for a video game, to go pick up my pre-order. I don't think they saw me all weekend. It is the first time I fell in love with an RPG, that I fell in love with a fantasy world that was not like, I'm coming off Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, high fantasy was the coolest thing in the world to a kid like me. And here was something that for me rivaled the excitement of watching those movies and reading those books. And it was like, oh my God, I'm in it. Like, the Imperial sewer encounter at the very beginning of the game is maybe the greatest opening to a game ever made. Walking out of the sewers, like, to this day, that is a breathtaking moment. That is still like one of the, like, you're set up to think like, oh, this is gonna be like a dungeon crawler or something, and you walk out and you're like, oh my god, this game is so much more. You see an Oblivion gate for the first time, you're like, oh my god, the whole Burma section with the Great Gate. And then that's without even getting into the DLCs. You get I remember getting Shivering Isles for the first time and being like, what the fuck am I playing? This game has taken such a sharp left turn for someone who, like, hadn't dabbled in a lot of the Daedric quests yet at that point. I was like, oh my god, this is incredible.
That was the first thing that I had a lot of influence on at the studio. So we did
Thank you so much.
And I was lead producer on all the DLCs of Oblivion and Fallout 3. And I did Horse Armor, Vile Lair, all the Ori, Wizard's Tower, all the stories. But Knights of the Nine, and it was a very small group of people. Some people I still to this day really enjoyed working with, and then the Shivering Isles was so good. It was so good.
That playing that game was the moment, because I mean I'm playing like that and Halo 2 within an 18-month span for the first time.
When you look at the DLCs of Bethesda, they're really interesting because, listen, the one thing we did is they were done in order back in the day. Like, there was a lot of layoffs, so you're seeing it now, but they were more cyclical. So a team released a game and they couldn't afford to keep everyone on staff, so they laid off people coming at so many studios. So what they did at Bethesda, and this was the brilliance of the management at the time, they made the DLCs to keep revenue coming in, to keep the people employed. So it was really just designers and artists, very little tech, right? But it's then the interesting thing about creativity is when it's limited, it's actually better. If that makes sense. It's so it was we didn't have new tech to add in, very little. So we had to do what we had with the tools that were given, and it was really cool to see. And when you look at Bethesda's history, like you look at Sheogorath, and then you look at some of the best Fallout 3 DLC, and then all like the pit
I think the
or
Far Harbor for Fallout 4
Far
personally.
Harbor, yes, Far Harbor, and then you look at, and then there's, I'm spacing on the Skyrim one, but you
Dragonborn.
look at, yeah, but you look at those, and there's some of the best content that Bethesda does. Is ironic.
100%. That was playing Oblivion was like when I walked out of this. I talk about this a lot. When I walked out of the sewers, that was the moment between that and the Game Informer article that I was like, I want to work on video games. I want to write about them. I want to talk about them. I want to do something adjacent to them in my life because this is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Yep.
So thank you for playing a very big role in teenage and college age Josh's
Yeah.
career trajectory and hopes and dreams.
I loved working on those. I really did. Just a quick shout out. The guy, one of the people responsible for the one of the best Fallout 3 DLCs, and it's not Far Harbor. And why am I spacing on right now? I'm gonna kill this. It's set in the swamp. Oh my god! Point Lookout is now an independent game developer. He's got a game called Axis Unseen coming out. His name's Nate Perkypile. Axis Unseen is on Steam right now. You can wishlist it. It's coming out in October. It's a solo game that he made all by himself, and it's going to be great. And he was responsible for some of the best content you guys have played over the last 15 years coming out of Bethesda. So
I am 100% going to look into that. I'm
take a look at it. Throw it on your wish list.
All right, so I actually think about this a lot sometimes, and like it's actually what I really want to say is part of my gamer DNA. The original Metroid game from the NES era. I mean, I've probably explained this to people before, but but Metroid was such a bare bones game back then. Like, I mean, like, basically you just had like the frame of what the atmosphere was going to be like. And, like it was basically it was an old school platformer. Like, like the cool thing about this game was like you can move left or right and up and down and stuff like that and things like that. And I just remember I remember like playing Metroid and not having that issue of Nintendo Power that had like all the maps and stuff in it and stuff like that. So getting lost and like muddling my way through it and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, like I just always stuck with it. And it's probably why Metroid is one of my favorite like franchises to date, and plus back then, like Nintendo games, in my opinion, like I don't feel like Nintendo games like got really like vivid until like 4 or 5 years into like the NES's life cycle. So for the most part, you're playing a lot of these games, and like you either had to use your imagination, or like like try to find various ways to navigate the crazy ass difficulties that were in those games and stuff like that. So yeah, Metroid, and like to this day, like I love a good platforming game. Like Way Forward just did Operation Galuga, which was basically a remake slash fan dub of the original Contra games and stuff like that. And yeah, like I was having a blast playing those games, and that's just something a little more modern. So yeah, I would say for sure like Metroid. Like Metroid's one of the earlier games that definitely put me on the gaming trajectory that I am now.
Nice. I mean, for me, I guess you could point at a ton of different games. Kaboom was the first video game I ever played. Tetris for Game Boy, obviously, just the greatest game ever made, in my opinion. But and then you look at Mario 64. For me, was like the first game that, video games are more than just like Ninja Turtles beat 'em ups and Mario side scrollers and licensed games and Sonic and whatever else. And then after Mario 64 was like, God of War 2 is a seminal game for me. I love that game so much. And Xbox 360, that launch of that generation was so important. Like those first 2 or 3 years was so important in shaping, games for me. Like Gears and Oblivion were the only 2 games I had until Halo 3 came out. And then those were the only 3 games I had for a while. Those and the dumb Burger King games.
Hey, listen, we respect Sneak King on this podcast.
Yeah, it's true. But in terms of where I'm at in my life now, I mean, I know that people are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but it's Destiny, right? I mean, my first podcast was about Destiny. You know, Josh, you and I do a pretty large Destiny podcast. I mean, it's why we're all friends here. I mean, Jeff, it's why you're sitting here is because of Destiny. It's Destiny is the reason I have my job in where I work now. It's like, it's crazy to think that all the things I'm passionate about came from this one game. But here we are. All right, let's get to listener questions. Some of these have been answered kind of, Josh and LeRon when we were talking earlier. So we might skip some of the questions, but or skip
mercifully some of them have been answered.
Yes. So Jeff, most of these are aimed at you. I would say all of them are actually. We'll get through what we can, and then we'll
lightning round.
Yeah, lightning round. The One True James via Discord asks, I want to shout out Sam Hall. He asked a pretty similar question. How in depth do you foresee the RPG systems being in Wyrdsong?
As deep as we can make them with the time given. I am a very big fan of deep and engaging systems design. It's sort of what I love to do. It's the games I like to play. So you're going to have obviously the standard skill trees and abilities. We have a very unique way to interact with those based on things you find in the environment. I'm not going to spoil. So there's going to be a grand level up system. It will be basically classless. I'm a big fan of that too. So you can just sort of just mix and match and pick what you want and play it forever. And then then there's the like the meta systems within the game, which are reputation and how your character interacts with the environment and changes along with it. The other thing, a big inspiration for the game was the original Fable, where in Fable the decisions you make has physical, tangible. I like behind the scenes systems, but I'm a big believer that anything you do behind the scenes should be represented in the game as much as possible. So in Fable, there, for instance, I'm not saying we're doing this, but you ate too much food, you got fat, right? And so we're going to incorporate that. And we have a very unique sort of karma system. Weird means fate or karma. So we're taking the title of the game, Weird, and building that into the character system. So not only will your reputation with the NPCs and denizens of the worlds that we're creating be affected by your decisions, but your actual physical avatar will as well. So we're going as deep as we can. Like I said, I'm a very big RPG nerd, and I love to represent as much as humanly possible in the game itself. So as you progress, we want your character to progress to not only just in stats behind the scenes, but in the actual avatar itself. So I'm really excited. Good question.
Our next question comes from Forrest via Discord. Was there a creature you wanted to include in a Fallout project but were unable to make it work?
There is one, and I'm going to space on the name, and I don't want to do that right now. So I would say, listen, I think we did a really good job. It's interesting, like, to answer the question on a more meta level, the Fallout, the world that Tim Kaine, Leonard Boyarsky, and others created for us to leverage the success that we had at Bethesda on. They were the original founding creators of that game, amongst the other devs who worked on it at the time. Was so rich. I think we got a really good representation out of the original too. There is a creature that I was really looking at the other day, and I'm going to space on the name, so I'm not going to say it. But if it comes to me in the next few minutes, I'll shout it out.
Safi via Discord. Safi from the Lore Together podcast. Great show about lore. They just did one on Oblivion. So
hi Safi.
What do you think the strengths are in the worlds of Fallout and Elder Scrolls that help create these games?
Ooh, that's a question that is not a lightning round question. Listen, again, like I think we alluded to this earlier. Like when you look at like there's a lot of corporate buzz speaky words, and one of them is IP. But when you're looking at great IP, intellectual property, or it really to me revolves around story, which is the setting and the characters that exist within that setting. If those are sound and solid, you can make a great game. If they're too tropey or too hackneyed, you're gonna forget you're gonna forget about them, and you may finish the game or not, but it won't stick. So when I first got into game development, I called myself a buffet eater of games. Like, I very rarely finished games. I would play a ton of games and almost never finish them. And I literally gave thought to that as to why, because I'm a game maker, and why don't I finish so many of these games? And the games that I finished did two things well to me. And again, everybody has different answers to this based on your psychographic profile and what you like and what you're playing games for. But for me, it was number one. Well, not number one, number two, really. But one of the machines is like introduce new and engaging mechanics throughout the entirety of the game. It didn't just give them to me in the first 2 hours and then ramp difficulty. Right? That's boring to me. When you give me all the game mechanics and then you're just throwing harder monsters at me, that won't engage me very long. I'll get bored with that and go to another game where I'm learning new mechanics, right? And then bouncing out of the game. So an example for that was Half-Life 2. The best gun in Half-Life 2 is given to you in the last level of the game, right? The gravity gun, right? But it was so amazing that every level I got some new tool to put in my toolbox to engage that world in. If anyone hasn't played Half-Life 2, you should put that in your book club. It's fucking great. I don't know if it holds up today, but dear Lord.
It holds up.
It holds up. Yeah, it's one of those games that I think has been so copied over the years. Like, sometimes you listen to old music, like, I don't understand why Led Zeppelin was great or something. It's because they were the first to do this stuff.
Mhm.
And everything since then had been sort of copies. Anyways, the second reason, and the more important reason, was the story. So I would overlook that rule number one, or bad gameplay, or all sorts of other things, if I was very engaged in the story and wanted to see what happened. Right? So for me, those are the number one strengths. It wasn't just the systems and all the things that you do within those games. It was the fact that you were compelled to complete the narrative, and sometimes that narrative's in your head, right? Sometimes it's a story you're telling yourself as you're playing the game about the adventure your personal character is going on. So anyways, that is the best answer I can give. It's the story in the lore, frankly. Yeah.
Christian S writes in, Patreon producer, looking forward to the interview. As far as questions, we kind of answered this a little bit at the top of the show. So, what has been your most challenging experience working on a game, and what lessons did you learn from that? And then he says, P.S. Wyrdsong looks rad as heck.
Awesome. Listen, we've talked a lot about Fallout 76, but I will say this, and I have shipped 7 major release games from soup to nuts. Really, some of them I came on midstream, but most of them, Oblivion's one of them, but most of them I was on the whole time. There's never been a game that I have shipped where I look back and go, man, that was so easy and came out so well. I am so they're all have these difficulties, no matter what they are. Especially, so the hardest part, if I could generalize it, is creative collaboration. You have to be able to work with other people and really get into and understand what they're the you have to really be able to work creatively with other people and compromise, honestly, but also hold your ground when it's really important. So it's this fine art. We used to call it, what hill do you want to die on? Right? Do you, so some hills you don't want to die on, but some hills you definitely do. And so, I give the cheeky example of Dragon Bones earlier. I don't know if I did that online when we were talking offline or not, but there's this, and it was a stupid example, but in Skyrim, we had the Dragon Bones weighed a lot, and there's still complaints about it online, but I like them. Still, I'm going to die on, because not everything should fit in your inventory, so it's going to be Dragon Bones. But anyways, it's there's no really, if that answers the question on a more meta level.
Still saying Shane via Discord, I would like to know how realistic and viable the Nuka Cola bottle caps could potentially be as a currency.
That's the one question I saw ahead of time. Sure. All money is a construct of our reality, our shared reality, and why not bottle caps? Just because it's green and printed on paper doesn't mean it's actually worth anything at all. It's just because we both agree that it's worth something, so why not? And in fairness, they're probably limited supply of those. It is a zero-sum amount of those in the fictional universe, so why not?
It's true. He also asked, what are the pros and cons of working in a post-apocalyptic setting?
The pros of Fallout in particular is you can do anything. Like in that particular post-apocalyptic setting, you can just about do anything and get away with it. Like you know, there's very few red lines you cross where you're like, this just isn't going to fit in the Fallout IP. There are some, but they're few and far between. We had nods to Aleister Crowley in Fallout 4. We had all sorts of stuff. Like there's things everywhere hidden in that game, and you'll see it online. People discovering things thousands of hours and years later. The cons for me are it. Listen, there's some like we did a lot of research into like the end of the world. Like we really did like what happens if humanity disappears, and it got a little dark. There was definitely times when it got a little dark. When we were doing all remember Fallout's also known for its ultra violence, and now that's much more common in games. But when we put up Fallout 3 and you could explode a head and see eyeballs and teeth and stuff, like we had a poor artist and they're looking at like post-mortem like just disgusting things all day. So it gets a little dark. It gets a little dark. And again, like I said, I was in that universe for 10 years, and I think you can also spend too long in post-apocalyptic, but it's fun.
Oh man, that's gross.
It
I'm
was
just thinking
something.
about like that's my job is researching like exploded body
Oh
parts.
yeah, we call them meat caps.
Ugh.
So we like when you're modeling the two sides of a dismemberment, we call them meat caps.
Marine Gamer 1289, we answered your question earlier, but I do want to read this comment. He had a shout out for having Jeff Gardiner on the show, the unsung hero of Bethesda. I am really looking forward to Wyrdsong. I've watched that IGN interview 100 times just to see the art. He also says, thanks for delivering my formative years as a gamer.
That's awesome. That means the world to me. Thank you so much.
And then our last question for the night comes from our buddy Fox over in Discord. With your new studio, what are some things we get a peek into that you guys are working on, and what can we expect to see in the future?
Well, we're working on a trailer now that we're gonna announce a lot of stuff in the couple of months. So we're really excited to show what we've been working on. The team we have is unbelievable. Remember, I have the design director from Outer Worlds, Charles Staples, who works alongside me, who works on Fallout New Vegas and Alpha Protocol and South Park Stick of Truth and just about every Obsidian game that has come out of that studio. I also have the illustrious Will Shen, who worked on Fallout Far Harbor. He was a lead designer on that. He was tapped to be the design director of Elder Scrolls 6. So I've got some powerhouse folks. It really is Bethesda and Obsidian coming together to make the next great RPG. And we take that to heart. And that's what we do every day.
Awesome.
So we're excited to show you more when it comes out, when we're ready.
We're excited to see more.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Thank you.
I think I could speak for our whole audience to say we're excited to see more of Wyrdsong. Jeff, that's it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening to my long-winded answer.
This was
thank you for giving us.
Yeah, for real.
This was awesome. The fact that we had you on once was awesome. Now that we've had you twice, it's even better. Where can people find more information about Something Wicked Games, about you?
On Twitter at Some Wicked Game. My personal Twitter's at JG93. We're on Facebook under Something Wicked Games. We're on Instagram, Something Wicked Games. So you can search any of those socials and find us easily. I haven't set up TikTok yet. I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole, but
we're not going to see you doing some weird TikTok trend dance.
You never know. You never know. But right now, that's it. We do have a YouTube channel at Something Wicked Games that has our initial launch trailer, which was really just 3 pieces of animated concept art. So I appreciate the enthusiasm and excitement. I hope we live up to everyone's expectations. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on. All the social links and stuff will be in the show notes as well, everybody. So got to make sure we get.
Yeah, I'll try to find the picture of me when I'm holding the Atari. I was looking for it quickly. I'll find it. It's in here. This nested folder nightmare I've got somewhere.
LeRon, Josh, thank you for your time as always as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
Everybody out there, thank you so much for listening and or watching. Remember to subscribe, share, rate, and review wherever you listen. Leave a comment on the video, like it, whatever, all those things, all those YouTubey words that we all are supposed to say but never really understand.
YouTubey words.
Yep. Thank you so much for watching and or listening, and until next time, we love you. Goodbye. If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network. Dude, I don't remember anything about today.
What did you have for breakfast yesterday?
A cup of coffee.
I have the same thing for breakfast every day. So I mean that I know what I had because I have the same thing every day, which is 2 eggs and a wrap and a banana.
And a Red Bull? No Red Bull?
And a Red Bull.
Okay, there you go.
12 ounce Red Bull.
You didn't have any salsa on that egg wrap or anything?
No, man. No. Look, you
don't love yourself. I know you're losing weight, but geez, like salsa has no calories, dude.
I understand, but I don't like salsa on my eggs, man. I like plain eggs, a little bit of cheese maybe sometimes, but you know.
So you literally have nothing to like, I don't know, like, because
no, dude, you know
me, I'm a cook. So, I'm sitting here like, okay, eggs, cheese, there's like nothing wet between the protein and the carb. Like what's happening here?
Nope. Not my one day is Saturday, man. I tell you, my one day is Saturday and I can eat whatever I want. So it's working so far. So
I'm worried about you.
Why? I feel great.
I am.
110 pounds, LeRon.
I know you feel great right now. Like you're on drugs. I know you feel great.
Well, that's a different great. I'm talking about the other me great. Anyways,
I mean, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but my doctor refilled my meds too.
Isn't it great? Don't you feel better?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
See? I take mine as needed because she tried to say like take it one a day until the first prescription runs out. And I was reading it's Adderall, by the way. I was reading about people that they can't figure out if they actually need it versus like they're just hooked on it. So I was like, nah, I'm not trying to go that route.
Yeah. There's a fine line between need and want of that. I'm following my doctor's instructions. He said take one a day. I said okay. And then in 90 days, I get another bottle that says take one a day. I said, okay. So, and then every 90 days, we have a follow-up. And then a week later, I get a new bottle with something in it.
So, man, I need to take you seriously whenever you say, LeRon, I think I'm going to walk into traffic today. I need to take you seriously when you say shit like that then. Okay.
Dude, I got to tell you, man. I didn't know this stuff worked like that until you're off of it for 5 days. And then you're just like,
see, that's what I don't want to encounter by taking mine.
Well, it's not
just
the Adderall, it's the antidepressants and then the pill that helps me fall asleep. All 3 of those that I take. I take them. I take one a day of everything.
What are you taking to help you fall asleep?
I don't know. It starts with an H. I don't know. My wife knows.
Can I have some?
No.
I have insomnia.
That's not my problem.
I have insomnia. They cannot pinpoint what's causing it.
Oh my gosh, this is great bonus content.
You get the sleep study.
I've had a sleep study. And of course, like the one time I had the damn sleep study, like I sleep all the way through the damn night. And it's like, what the fuck?
Those wires in my head, it was terrible. I think I slept 2 hours. Of course, everybody walks out here with a CPAP. You can't sleep. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Oh man. Good times.
Anyway.
Great times. I wish my kids would sleep. They're what's keeping me up now. So, all right, we should probably do the show, huh? All right, so I'm going to intro everybody. Jeff, we're going to go into who you are, something wicked, Wyrdsong if you want.
Sure.
Josh, LeRon, this is your chance to ask him your questions if you want, and then we'll get into what we've been playing. And I cut out a whole section to make room for these questions and everybody else's questions. So, yeah. All right.
I did not read these questions, so it will be live.
Oh, you're going in blind. You're going in blind. All right.
Well, I added 5 of them today, so
that's fine.
Yeah.
I will do my best. If I can't answer them, I will say I can't answer them.
I believe in you, Jeff.
The suing.
All right.
Did you say?
I'm going to count us down. 3.